Good evening. My name is Matt Wallace. I serve as Scottsville's Town Administrator. You're now viewing the meeting recording and live stream for the Scottsville Planning Commission meeting. Today is October 3rd, 2022, coming up on 7 p.m. local time. This meeting is held in compliance with Virginia Freedom of Information Act and the state open meeting laws. We're meeting here physically at the town office, 401 Valley Street. We also have opportunities for the public to attend and participate both online and by phone. This evening's meeting includes a couple of public hearings duly advertised. Those are also available for public comment both in person, by telephone, and online. The local time here now is 6 minutes until 7 o'clock, the posted start time for our meeting. We're still setting up our room and assembling our quorum here, so I'll mute the line now. If you're viewing in the future on our YouTube channel, thank you very much. You can skip ahead 6 minutes on the recording and you'll see us come to order. Thank you.
begins.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for being here. I am so excited to see so many faces. So this is the Planning Commission meeting, October 3rd. We have a quorum. We're all here, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do we need a roll call? Okay. Here.
Briscoe.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Strasser. Here. Commissioner.
Here. Okay, thank you. Can we agree to an agenda?
I actually have something I want to bring up here. So it was brought up in the town council meeting that the minutes aren't being provided before the meeting. Totally understand that you all have a lot going on, but you know, if you need another staffer, I don't know, whatever it is you need to do, but I got tons of email this afternoon. I work and I'd really like to have time to look some of these over. Obviously, they came in late and were probably sent to us, but I just wanted to let you know that I'd like to be able to review those things. It was brought up at town council. I think we've already talked about it, but I wanted to bring it up here because I think it's a really important thing for all of us.
Absolutely. Let's audit.
I hear you. Yeah,
Try to get it in a little bit earlier.
I hear you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on that note, the June 6th minutes, I'm sorry, I don't remember. I know you gave them to us, but I think we have to vote on them. But
Those.
you emailed it to us like after last meeting, but we do need to add it to the agenda, but let's go ahead and.
Are you comfortable with, have you reviewed those to your satisfaction for earlier?
I reviewed them right after they came out and I don't remember any that I needed to say about them, but I don't know if my commissioners remember them. Okay.
I wasn't in tune to that. I'm sorry. I'm not even in tune to these. I'm trying to scan them now. I don't feel good about that either.
June 6th documents for next month.
And then the emails that came out today and Friday, they're pertinent to tonight's discussion, but I'm not fully versed on what came out today either. So we'll have time to review them. We can definitely talk about them tonight, but there was some questions about traffic and affordability. And I definitely want to delve into that more, but we could, either tonight or if we adjourn this, we could talk about it then as well. Okay.
Thank you for your consideration.
Other than that, I would say that I'd like to conduct the hearings one at a time. So I'd like to first do item 5A, close that public hearing, decide what we're going to do. That way, if Ms. Radley's here, she doesn't have to stay if she doesn't want to, and so on, rather than discussing it all at the end. Okay. The other thing is, because we have a full house tonight and I want everyone to have an opportunity to speak, if the commissioners feel like we just can't tackle the rest of the agenda, then don't feel pressured to. I know at a certain point I start to get a little loopy and I can't focus as well. So if we decide that we can get to items, 6A and 6B, then we can definitely put them off.
I think the one thing we might want to do is just make sure the issues that are most of concern to the citizens here tonight, just make that top of the line.
Agreed. Okay. So do we have a motion on this agenda?
Should we reorder it, or do you think that are you good with the order as it is?
I think I'm okay with it. I don't think that 5A is going to take all that long, but it is a public hearing, so I'm glad that we have folks hearing.
So maybe we want to talk about the matters from the public to be talked, understood that it's talked about in
Mhm.
detail,
Mhm,
that kind of thing.
mhm.
Meeting minutes. for the Next meeting.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so June 6th, we'll deal with that at the next meeting. I'll clarify item 4 before we get there.
What did we
And
decide about September 6th? Next week.
okay,
Next meeting, next week.
what is the standard in getting those to us? Is it the Thursday before?
The week before, Thursday, Friday.
Mhm.
depending on time.
Preferably Thursday. Okay. Is that okay? Does that work?
Yeah, I'm just into bashing for Javier.
Okay. Okay. Motion?
Go ahead, please.
Well, no,
You're so eloquent.
I move that we move forward with the agenda as so written.
Okay. All in favor? Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So that covers number 2. We're going to move that to the next meeting. Report on relevant actions by the town council. Councilor Gritsko.
I think the most thing that I would say, we did have some conversation about this meeting tonight. We talked about just the importance of the process that we're going to be going through as a town as we look at these important sites. We looked at a few grant issues that we had with police vehicles. We talked about this new listing of the various different committees and a reorganization that's been done by Councillor Heisen, which has been very needed. And also the mayor reported on his events of the past few weeks. We also recently have a completion of the Department of Wildlife Resources dock that's actually here. We'll have a public unveiling of that in the next couple of weeks. Matt, is there anything else from the meeting that you think should be highlighted?
It's a pretty light action item, Janice.
Yeah.
And actually,
Speaking of which,
yes, and speaking of which, I'm so sorry. I wanted to present this. This is from the Capitol. And this flag was presented to Councilor Gritsko. And this states, this Virginia state flag was flown over the Capitol, the state capitol in Richmond, Virginia on September 23rd, 2022, in honor of the partnership of Virginia's Fish and Wildlife Specialists, Scottsville Town Council with Daniel Gritsko as project champion, and the community of anglers of all ages and abilities around Scottsville. So thank you so much for your work in getting this accomplished for us.
I said, when I didn't realize that was going to be here, just to, I know we're have lots of debate in this conversation, but it wasn't fair to start out making me feel very emotional, and just the sense of there's a lot of work that's gone on the last 8 years with a lot of people. Some of y'all are sitting in this room that have helped this happen. And it's been a really wonderful thing to see. The most recent thing is this doc coming in, and there's a lot of things we have to do. So thank you to everybody who's been involved. And like I said, lots of you are here who've been a part of this, and this was a shock to me. So thank you.
Well, things work better in our town when everyone works together. So thank you for spearheading that. And as evidenced by everyone here tonight, we're better when we work together.
For sure.
And I believe that this agenda will be better with the input that we have tonight. So one more thing that I failed to mention, elections. November 8th is when we are voting for our town council. And that's a change from how it was done in the past. So everyone be prepared to vote November 8th. That was a law that was just enacted by our state. And they didn't really ask our input. They just kind of told us it's going to be November. Okay, so matters from the public. We do have a public hearing on 530 Valley Street, 800 Bird Street, And so those two items, if you're planning to speak about those two items, the time will come for that. But is there anyone who'd like to speak on anything else tonight? We also have engagement online on Zoom, so they'll be keeping an eye on that and letting us know if anyone wants to chime in on that platform. Okay. All right, very good. Moving to item 5A, old business zoning map amendment 530 Valley Street. This is to correct a zoning map. In the 1990s, the petitioner, Miss Radley, did successfully get the lot at 530 Valley Street rezoned commercial, but the map was not amended. So this is just to formalize the map. Any other comments on that before we open up the hearing?
No, Madam Chair. It's the side yard on the small purple, between the small purple building on Valley Street and the Simpson House. The map is in error. It shows both of the lots as being commercial, but that rezoning on the side yard was never done. And so the applicant thought that was the case and requested it.
So the rezoning is being done. But the town council approved it in the 90s.
The lot with the house on it was completed and set to commercial. The planning commission made a recommendation to do the rezoning, but they got to the ends of their terms and there was staff turnover and official turnover, and council members took the final action. So it looks like it's a procedure that went most of the way through and didn't quite finish.
Okay. Okay, so this is to rezone the parcel from residential to commercial. All right, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this tonight? If you could state your name and about where you live.
Hi, my name's Maria Morel. I live at 581 Harrison Street in Scottsville. I live on the road just above Valley Street. And I'm not speaking to the rezoning of that parcel specifically, but at the principle of making Valley Street totally commercial. I think it's a pretty basic planning principle these days of good planning to have mixed use, and making something 100% commercial or mostly commercial creates strip malls. And I urge us to not be moving toward making Valley Street entirely commercial, because I don't think it's good planning, and our society needs affordable housing more than it needs commercial districts. And it's an unfortunate reality that any houses above Valley Street suffer from whatever development noise generated from commerce on Valley Street is. I know that part of the strategic plan for this new zoning ordinance that we have is to highlight and value the historic district of Scottsville. It's hard to be a homeowner in a historic district when you're mostly presented with burdens of ARBs and the impact of development on Valley Street. So those two principles don't mesh well in that strategic plan, and I think that needs consideration. And I thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody's hands on.
There's another one over here.
My name is George Goodwin. I'm across the bridge. I think everybody knows me. Anyway, as long as we're looking at possible errors or corrections, I'd like to think about this property, the purple building property, and I think it should not be just commercial, because there is a garage and there's an entrance to residential on that lower part of that area. So I think it's also quote, in error. It should be mixed use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does she have plans to open up a storefront there at all?
The property had a storefront years ago. The owner doesn't operate that anymore. The question came up through the idea of how the property could be subdivided. It has 2 lots in parallel now, skinny lots next to each other. And the question was about whether and how they could be switched so that it was a front and back lot instead of 2 skinny ones. And in looking at the history on that, that was how we found that the status of things was incorrect.
Yeah,
So no immediate plans for changing these.
yeah, it just seems funny to be correcting it to commercial when there's no commercial, product there.
That's
Or,
I think it's more about thinking for the future.
okay, thank you.
Ma'am.
Thanks, I'm really Shipley. I also live in Buckingham County, but I do have a storefront in Scottsville. It actually happens to be, I guess, right beside minus the street that divides us. I do think that it should stay mixed use instead of just going straight commercial unless there is immediate plans to go and sell the piece of property. Simply because she does have a car, and whoever else may live there, I don't know if there's more than one person, but they do have a car. They do use the little side street right there, it's Lindsay Street, to pull into that garage and then go from there into the house. The door, there's a door with like little people on the side of Lindsay Street that has been used as an entrance in and out for residential. So I don't see the need for this to be zoned just straight up commercial, to just leave it as mixed use. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I think it's just the empty lot next door.
In other words, without a reason, it seems to be awkward to be doing this.
Sure, it's a correction from what was already approved, so it's awkward all the way around.
Was she the property owner, the person who asked for this to be done? Or was this
Originally.
Town just trying to clean up.
I'm acknowledging the error that the pattern of history, council never took that final vote. So
Okay.
this map is incorrect. And this is what we've been using. So staff is initiating, if this is the intent of the council, clean up the map so that it reflects this.
Okay, and so the piece of property that she also owns is currently commercial,
Yes,
and this is the residential piece.
that's right.
Could we change it to mixed use? Or do we have to vote on whether it's gonna be commercial or residential?
Right now, the only request is to go from village residential to commercial. And you're talking about just the side yard piece here. This one doesn't have a structure on it.
Right.
There wasn't, if you wanted to create the mixed use, it would involve a special use permit for residential as well. We could certainly ask the property owner about that, but I don't want to misrepresent it.
Okay. So we could just leave it as is and update the map.
Yes, if the application to rezone failed, I would just change this little red rectangle to the orange, and that would reflect the current reality.
I mean, it seems to me most people have been wanting to have the mixed use. So, I mean, that's been desirable. So I don't see why
Well, I'm
she
just
wouldn't
not
want
clear on
that.
what she wants to do with the property. Is she hoping to change the boundary line to have 2 properties back to back instead?
I believe so. Looking at the, and again, this is not a firm business plan or anything, but looking at the way that the back lots are configured elsewhere on the street with the rear accessory building at the Stinson House and the rear commercial building at the telephone exchange. If instead of being 2 narrow side-by-side lots, it was a front lot and a back lot with the shared access on the alley, then maybe a commercial building similar to this one, and this one could go in line here.
Okay,
So she's
well,
talking about what set of property lines might be able to create that, but there's no construction plan or business plan that can go into that.
Okay.
Just some actions on it.
And so the boundary ends where the gate ends? Or is it all the way across to the Stinson boundary?
It's the existing building pretty well fills the width
Right.
of the one lot,
Right.
which is commercial. And then this residential lot is a side yard with a fence at the side of it. And then it goes up the hill towards the Decker Morel property.
one more question, I'm sorry. Was she wanting to combine both of them together as one? Are they able to do that?
A subdivision action would be separate,
Okay,
and the zoning doesn't matter for that.
okay,
You could rearrange the property lines without doing any of this. But then it would create split parcel zoning, where
right.
this piece of it is commercial and this piece of it is residential.
Okay.
And is there,
I think if we're, oh, sorry, go ahead.
is there an easement to use that as a way to get to Harrison Street? Because is that, oh, that's where they're doing it, okay.
Yes, this, yeah, this is still, town property, a street that was never fully improved the way the others were, so it works as a walking path and maybe streets.
Okay. Gotcha.
I believe if we're just correcting what the town council already voted on.
Well, the
But I-
town council didn't vote on it. That was.
That's the issue. It didn't get to that point.
Oh, okay, the full vote.
Right.
So
I
we
thought it just wasn't
recommended-
added to the map.
The planning commission recommended it go forward to them.
I got it.
With approval in 1990.
97,
Mhm.
97, 98 calendar year change.
So if she doesn't have any immediate plans to do anything with the property, we can just leave it as is. and update the map.
Yeah, it could be that the same application comes back years from now when someone else has specific plans.
So, but we would need to address do we have to address the application today? This is our conversation about whether to update this or not. It's not her application, so we could decide just to leave it alone.
Yes, I'm raising it at the staff level because it looks like an inaccuracy, and I wasn't sure how to say it.
Okay, so either adjusting the map to be residential or pushing this forward to town council to consider rezoning to commercial.
Well, the other thing, Matt, you're saying that the driving force on this is us as a town versus her. Is that correct?
She started the conversation. I wasn't proactively hunting this down. She started the conversation of how do I rearrange my lot, thinking about estate planning law in the future. And that got me looking and then found the confusion in the map. So she does have a certain intent. It's not academic.
Ms. Strausner, do you want to make a motion?
I think I'm kind of hesitant to rezone it without knowing what the intent is. So I would make a motion to update the map to reflect its commercial or its residential status.
I'd love to second that motion.
Discussion?
You're gonna say something, you're gonna say something.
Wasn't gonna say a thing.
Okay.
I was
well,
just gonna say, then I think we should, and then I did.
Well, I mean, I would like to say something. I think, if we recognize that there's an inconsistency, and we know that if there was a structure there that had an upstairs that could easily be residential, we approve those all the time. Why not just cut down on some of the work that this woman's going to have to go through down the road? I mean, I feel like we're always hearing that there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of barriers when, why not just make it easier so that it's in conformity?
I think I would be more comfortable making it mixed use instead of just saying.
Well, that would be giving them a special use permit.
which they didn't apply for.
Right.
I don't know. Can you just rezone something to something else when the property owner's not involved?
May I make another comment?
Yes, you may.
Simply, don't you want to know what's going there, or plan to go there before you vote on something? This.
I
mean,
suspect,
It could be put a maintenance garage, if you zone it commercial, you're done.
yeah, I don't have any idea about that, but I get the sense that she wants to sell it eventually. Is that right? That this will make it easier for her to sell? No.
Well, the other thing I would say to follow up would be hearing the thoughts of the citizens out here, and given what you just said, with the lack of other compelling reasons, it
Right.
doesn't seem like we should do something at the moment, which I would agree with y'all that there's concern. We don't know what the plan is. Let's do nothing until we hear what the plan is.
Okay.
Because that also gives the citizens the ability to come back and talk to us and say, this is how we feel about whatever the plan is, if there ever is a plan.
Okay. We ready to vote?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you want to read the motion, please? Reread it.
The motion is to update the map to reflect correct zoning. That motion is made by Strasser, seconded by Johnson. Chair, would you want to do a roll call?
Is that
All in
necessary?
favor?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay. I didn't actually formally close the public hearing. Next time I'll have to remember that. Okay, 5B zoning map amendment and special use permit 800 Bird. Currently zoned industrial. They'd like to rezone to commercial with a special use permit for multifamily residential. Before I open up the hearing, would you like to go over parts of your staff report again, or should we just proceed to how would you recommend we do this? Because we've already had the staff report and had Echelon speak to us. I don't know how much of that we need to redo, but
There are a number of folks here this evening who weren't present for the earlier presentation. Do you think it would be helpful to refresh your?
yes, yeah, if we could kind of try to do it briefly.
The property in question is the industrial zone parcel here. Currently zoned light industrial grounds, heavy industry under the roof of the factory building. The history of the property is well known. The applicants before us this evening are Echelon Resources. They work on apartment building projects, and their application is to use historic tax credits to finance a renovation of this building into a maximum of 205 apartment buildings. That requires a rezoning to commercial and a special use permit. I might invite them to say just a few words about themselves and the project. Sometimes it's helpful.
And the report is available online, correct?
Yes, the planning commission page of the town website has all of the documents that were in the slide.
Evening.
Thank you.
Edwin Gaskin with Echelon Resources. Again, I think the materials that we presented last time are on the town website. I know it's been covered by local media and picked up in a couple of podcast episodes. So it's been well covered, but we are a historic property redevelopment team. We've been doing this almost 20 years, and we specialize in this, taking historic buildings and using our capital and lender capital and historic tax credit capital to bring to markets well-run apartments that we generally operate of our own accord. We're long-term owners, developer owners. So as I said in the last meeting, we eat our own cooking because every decision we make in the design and construction process, we have to live with. So we invest in, I think, quality materials and quality designs. So we have been looking at the Scottsville market for a long time, and this building in particular, and the opportunity arose for us to gain site control with the purchase contract. And so that's why we're before you all today. And that's always available for any questions. Is that the kind of summary you're looking for? Or I'm happy to.
I think you might add one more thing for the citizens would be a little bit of a explanation of the other places you've done some things like this.
Sure. We are unusual in that we've developed in far-flung places, from the Eastern Shore to Martinsville to Wilson, North Carolina, to Culpeper. We're all over Virginia and into North Carolina. A lot of our properties are in places that have not seen large-scale redevelopments, and usually we work on iconic buildings in the communities. And all of the projects we've done have been successful, thank goodness. Yeah, there's a good map showing the purple and projects we've completed, and the red ones, red stars where we are in pre-development at some stage. So it ranges from schools like you're seeing in Halifax Lofts. We're working on our 8th historic school in Pulaski right now, to warehouses such as Imperial Lofts in South Boston, Virginia. Again, a very similar comparable to here, as it was a very large building in a small market. A more urban redevelopment, historic peanut factory in Suffolk, Virginia. Not very comparable in terms of neighborhood, but certainly in terms of industrial scale. There's a whole host of photos and other information online on our website, echelonresourcesinc.com. We are a small business. My wife and I started this again 20 years ago. We have a small number of strategic partners, one of which is here tonight, Mr. Randy Cosby, and we care deeply about what we do. We aren't repping any sort of big corporate interest. We are the business interest, and we love what we do. So really what we're proposing to do is, I guess what you might call professional grade or workforce housing. And we encourage a really high quality space where people consider their apartment their home. We believe that's more than just delivering a paint and 2x4s. It's really an emotional context. We have a lot of our tenants that work from home, and we provide amenities not only in terms of high-speed internet baked into the rents, but also breakout spaces that they can use either as an amenity or as a long-term lease arrangement, where they might need their own Zoom office to get away from the dog or the kids or their partner for more professional context. And I guess to wrap it up, we love this building, but more importantly, we love the fact that it's attached to Scottsville. We wouldn't really be interested in this building if it were just 5 miles in any direction. We feel the town itself is the amenity. And though it is a little bit of a walk, we think the sense of place that Scottsville has is what makes this property viable in terms of redevelopment. Even though it's a heavy lift, this is a very large building in any market. And it is a lot to get your mind wrapped around in terms of doing this kind of building in Scottsville per se. So we are leaning into this because we believe in Scottsville as a place where people will be attracted to not only live in, but participate in as citizens.
Sorry.
Well, we're going to open up the hearing in just a moment. And I'd like to have a little bit of a question and answer opportunity, but I also want to be mindful of the fact that we're going to have a lot of questions and we might very well need to have a continuation of this. And we'd like to invite you back if that's the case. But I do want to have a question and answer session after I open up the floor. I'll close the floor, bring you back up, see if you can address some of the questions. but we're probably going to need to see you again another time.
Well, as you see fit, we're here, whether it's more conducive to do that after all the questions are answered, or if some as we go, as you see fit. This is your meeting. Happy to dance to your music.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think my concern would, I want to make sure that we're gonna maintain some decorum. I want to have some order to it. And I think probably the best way to do it would be to have everyone have a couple of minutes to speak, speak courteously, be mindful of time. I'm not setting an allowance on how long. I think just as long as you need, but preferably do be mindful of the time and the those around you also who will want to speak. But then at a certain point, I'm going to close the public hearing, and then we'll invite Mr. Gaskin up to answer questions from us and those that were presented tonight. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. So with that, I would like to open up the floor for comment. Who'd like to go first? And if you could just state whereabouts you live. Come on up. Do you have an order?
I have a list.
Awesome, thank you.
Then I could put anybody on.
Sure, okay. It's not closed. You could still sign up if you'd like to.
Pass it along also, so first time.
Okay, all right, so who's first?
Thomas Unsworth.
All right, Mr. Unsworth, nice to see you.
Very nice to see you all too. Thank you so much. And I do appreciate the attention to procedure there. I'll be quick. And I'll consolidate my comments. Sorry, I'm Thomas Unsworth, 275 Bird Street. I'll consolidate my comments with my extended family and immediate neighbors at 280 Bird Street, John and Maggie Unsworth.
That's efficient.
Great. Well, I also need to get home and put some kids to bed. And so I will catch the rest of this later on the recording. And thank you so much for doing that. I watched the recording of the last meeting, and I want to say thank you all, first of all, for engaging in what appeared to be a very constructive and productive conversation. I think that this is a really big and important opportunity in front of the town. And I think that you have a potential partner here that you're not likely to come across again from what I've seen and what I've learned from doing a little bit of research here. It seems to me that the vested interest in a finished product that they have to live with as well, as opposed to a developer who's looking to make a quick buck by flipping a big old structure, perhaps not with the best interest of the community and the everlasting impact at their heart. You have a chance here to work with somebody who does have those concerns at the forefront of their mind as well. And I hope that you seize that opportunity to dive deeply into the kinds of concerns that residents here tonight, myself included, will share about it. I think that there's a lot of work that can be done on impacts to transportation, though, you know, VDOT says the road has a capacity. I don't know who else to believe other than VDOT, so I am inclined to take their word for that. That doesn't mean that there aren't benefits, and I heard at the start of some of this conversation about ways to maybe bring in bus lines or you know, public transportation connections that could help alleviate some of the pressure here. I think there's also just a lot that we can do with basic road directions and things like that that can probably help. But I highlight that as an opportunity to get creative and really get in the weeds with your partners here. I don't imagine that is necessarily a quick process, but I think that it is markedly different than, you know, how this has gone in the past, even recently, where, you know, the interest has been much more, no, let's get something done and move forward. And I think here again, you know, what I've seen so far indicates to me an understanding that everybody's in this for the long haul. That seems rare in this kind of game. So yeah, I think the opportunity here for the town to grow a little bit, to expand, not only for what it supports its businesses with, but also what the town itself does. Obviously, there's a revenue component here. And I know, you know, more bodies in restaurants means more people and more meal snacks for you. But Dan is the liaison to town council and to our other town councilors in the audience here tonight, I also hope that you recognize the significance and the importance of the opportunity to change the way that the town invests in itself and in its own services, because this will require an expansion of services in public safety, perhaps a contribution to the volunteer fire department that has not historically been anything more than a pass-through from the county. Perhaps, more police officers, perhaps an increase in the maintenance budget. I think all of these things are not unreasonable to foresee in your future. And as a resident who does not order that many pizzas or takeout, I don't feel that I'm carrying my weight in that regard through meals tax and business license alone. So I hope that you think hard about other ways that perhaps us residents can contribute, especially before value of property starts to rise. Redevelopment. So anyway, that's probably more time than I needed. But thank you all very much, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas.
Megan?
Oh, we were consolidated there.
Thank you for your patience.
Madam Chairwoman and commission members and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity. In fact, I called this afternoon to see if I could come to speak because I'm right over the line of Savannah. Not far away from here, but what happens in Scottsville deeply affects me.
Indeed, and we're glad that you're here.
And I want to keep it short, so I don't want you to think that I'm against development. I'm not. And I've read some of the minutes from before, and I know that you're taking this as a serious consideration. But be careful. Once you change the atmosphere and the structure of the town, it is virtually impossible to go back. And the gentleman was right. Scottsville has a sense of place, and you don't want that to change. So balancing it is going to be a very tricky thing. I thought about this meeting when I was sitting trying to cross from the road that goes to the cemetery, cross 20 to get down the food line at about 4:30 in the afternoon. You didn't get across until almost 5:30.
Oh.
And then if you start thinking about pumping a lot of extra vehicles on that road, whatever VDOT says, unless VDOT's going to put a bigger road in, that's a concern. Also, I would ask that you would consider coordinating with both Savannah and Avalon County about projects that are already going on in the area or being considered. Savannah is greatly expanding both west, almost due west, in a significant manner. And of course, the street where 745 and Outrage Spring run together, on the right there is a consideration for some housing going in there as well. And all of these are separate, if I understand it correctly, jurisdictions, and you're going to, getting, again, a balance is going to be very, very difficult. It's doable, but I would ask that you go with caution. Let me finish by saying, Mr. Britsko knows me. I spent my childhood growing up in the Army. I spent 42 years in the Army, and I chose Scottsville to live. I've lived here longer than I have lived anywhere in my life, and it's a wonderful place. Now, do I want to see the town prosper? Of course. Do I want to see the individuals prosper? Yes. Do I want to see significant change that changes that sense of place? No. And I have seen that in other places. And we just ask that you take that into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Carson, what? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Hello. My name is Carson Lowe, and I live on East Main Street here in Scottsville. Some of you might recognize me. I sell donuts at the farmer's market. My family goes back in this area 8 generations. And Scottsville is a place that I deeply love and deeply care about. And just like the previous gentleman just mentioned before me, it is such a unique place. It's such a beautiful place. It really is community, and it's where I consider home. I can't think of another place that I would hold higher than Scottsville. I just find that it's undeniable that the addition of 205 potential apartments would change the character and just the overall way that the town is. And I totally am for, responsible growth. And I know that in the comprehensive plan and zoning regulations for the town, that it stipulates that the preservation of the character of the town is a priority. And I think that it is very important that we go about growth in a positive way, in a way that continues and continues the growth of our town, just in a way that people are attracted to live here. Like people like myself who want to bring up new residents in Scottsville, and people who are involved in the community and aren't just driving to Charlottesville. Because my fear is that housing in a mass quantity like proposed might become just kind of like overflow housing for Charlottesville. Because if you've noticed on the way down 20, just like growing the amount of like residential areas, and there's totally an influx of people, which is great, but I just want it to be in a way that provides the best outlook for our town and the services that we currently provide here, in a way that respects the town, because like our roads, our infrastructure, water, sewage, services. I know all of these things have been brought to your attention before, but I think it's really important to consider how we're taking care of the town currently and just building on that. And I also want to bring up about 10 years ago, there was a proposal to put in like an indoor gun range for the, I guess the fire department, or the police department. And that was turned down because of like concerns about noise and traffic. And I just think that this is kind of going to bring a lot more traffic than that would have brought. So this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But again, I just ask you to consider some of the things I brought up and just think about how it might affect the town in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So thank you guys so much for listening and considering.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like on Harrison Street, directly impacted by this development. As I said earlier, we need affordable housing. And so if we can have a development of affordable housing, that's great. I mean, 66,720 as a workforce affordable income with a monthly rent of 1/3 of your income is not a good investment for rent. I know that rent is astronomical these days, but that seems kind of off. It's 1/3, sorry about that. Anyway, my main concern is public safety. Bless his heart, but your son was running down the middle of Harrison Street today on my way to work. Harrison Street is notoriously congested. We only have on-street parking, most of us. We live in a historic district. We can't build garages. We park on the street. It's two-way. It should be one-way, but it isn't. You have to slow down. Very few people go the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. There are children scurrying all over that road. There are like 8 kids now at the bus stop in the morning, and there are no sidewalks. They have to walk down that road. It's the main thoroughfare when people want to avoid Valley Street 120. And Bird Street and Valley Street is not well maintained. I would just like us to do a better job of controlling traffic there. The business owner in front of Valley and Bird regularly parks on Bird Street right around the corner. So when you're taking a tight corner, there's just a car parked there. There are recycling bins, there are trash bins left in the street. That again is a street that has on-street parking. It's really one lane, and so you're just doing this, driving up that street, trying to avoid trash bins, people, children, and people who park their cars in the middle of the street. So development's great if we have good planning that goes along with it, and we have sidewalks, and we keep a pedestrian community, and we keep it walkable, and we keep our kids safe when they're going to the park and to the bus stop. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch Hall.
Thank you. I'm Mitch Keller. I live from Rock Island Farm outside of town. I want Scottsville to grow, but I want it to grow slowly. My biggest concern with the project is that with 200 apartments, you're going to get at least 300 new voters, and they're going to be a voting block that's going to run the town. They're going to outnumber. They're going to be able to, all they do is sway a little more people and get a majority. And they're going to be able to do whatever they want to do with it, depending on how much control they've got. There's an awful lot to give to people who will primarily be coming from outside of Scottsville to rent here. The other concern that I have, and it can be answered questions, is just the overall project. The math doesn't work for me in that they say it's a $60 million investment for 200 apartments. Well, the prime rate today was 6%, so 6% of 60 million is $3.6 million. At $1,500 an apartment, the rent for a year for all those apartments is $3.6 million. So the apartments won't even generate enough rent to cover the interest on the money that's going to be borrowed to build it. And you still got your management costs and everything else to do with it. So to me, there has to be something else that's going to go on to bring the income, and I'd like to see an explanation for, which I'm sure we'd have to address. But it's an awful lot of, that means, to me, what it means is that the rents are going to escalate as quickly as possible, which of course is in their interest to do. But I'd like to see what else is going to be there, which is going to aggravate the traffic and aggravate other concerns the town might have for it. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Hey, everybody, I'm Sarah Woods. I think generally this is a neat concept and a neat idea. It's something that you would definitely see. I think if there were a chance to do the woolen mills again in Charlottesville, it would be a great fit in somewhere like that. I do have questions about Scottsville per se. Like I said, I think it is a neat idea. I find it slightly unfortunate that it's not condos and instead it's leased. That's a lot of transient population that, though we want to welcome them into the community, they may not be interested in being a part of the community. At the presentation last month, the marketing is designed for young professionals, singles or small group families to maybe a couple of kids. But I wish that there were something more for those who want to, say, buy a condo, who want to live long-term and not pay a rent in the area. With that just kind of as the opener, I also want to say really quickly that I've noticed that kids and adults during all of this process seem to have a lot in common. And that's as soon as someone says, as soon as someone says they want to slow down and take a measured approach, the first reaction is to say, well, are you afraid? Are you afraid of change? Are you afraid of development? And that's not always the case. Sometimes people are just noticing that there may be holes that can be better filled in other ways. And I'm just hoping that as a community, there won't be that drive to immediately say, well, all the people who are local to this area are afraid of change. That's not necessarily the case. Again, it is a really neat idea, but some of it I have questions about. With regards to the property size, even with the wetlands, there's around 10-ish acres not necessarily accounted for in some of the things that might be off on my calculations. But what exactly else is going into that area and into the open space? With regards to the request to be exempt from the flood regulations that were just approved back in December. I think it's kind of interesting because it has to do with the historic nature of the dwelling and not wanting to ruin it in order to conform to some of the ordinances. They're putting 205 apartments into an old tire factory and opening the ceiling up to the sky. So in some ways, there's going to be some heavy changes regardless. And do those flood overlay ordinances really impact the historic nature of the building that isn't technically, according to our ordinances, historic yet? Or are they just harder to fulfill? And with that in mind, as the public hasn't been able yet to review the outcome of the latest FEMA study, we're kind of forced to use outdated information. However, the secondary parking lot and the secondary road that is listed according to ordinance is, yes, though legal as the secondary access point, that is definitively in a flood zone, even if it is in the new one. You have 2 sets of berms and that roadway will be in a flood zone. So when it comes to protecting safety vehicle access, you have 1 in and 1 out. You would have potential of people losing property if they're parking in that area. If anybody wants to know what it's like to lose property quickly in a flood, take a look about 10 years ago at Radford, where they had all their students parked down near the river and they had to do an emergency release, and about 100 cars at least were completely flooded and inundated within a matter of hours. The students could not wake up early enough and fast enough to get their cars moved. That's how fast it took place. And so in good faith, I don't know if you could call that a really good access point. And it made me also question that Upper Bird LLC is still the owner of the property right next door. And if I remember, the berm doesn't go all the way around in a circle. So is there a possibility of having an access road that connects the community in Upper Bird that was just approved and using that as an access point above the flood zone area? I bring that up too because a lot of the comments that are often made when people bring up Crozet, people think it has to do with population. It's less about population and more about the disconnected nature of how it developed. So you have tiny little communities all within this one area that should be one larger community, but because you don't have that connection where you can drive through, everybody kind of stays in their pod. And that's one of the issues. Also creating that car reliant area is one of the reasons people use Crozet as an example. It's less about population and more about disconnectedness. And right now you would have one community here and one community there and just Bird Street, but no real connection point between the two. So that was just something that I thought during the traffic study never hit on Route 20 and James River Road, which some of the commissioners have presented as their back route of choice in getting around the downtown access area. 205 apartments would greatly impact now that we also have a gas station moving in and potential for other development later on at Blenheim and Mink Creek Estates. That intersection truly needs to be studied before commitments are made about bringing more people in. And seemingly it's always left out of the traffic studies, and that is in the current comprehensive plan. I know you are working to redo the comprehensive plan, but currently that is a part of the comprehensive plan, reevaluating and realigning that particular intersection as it is a gateway intersection to Scottsville as a whole. And if these young professionals are working in Charlottesville, they will be traveling back and forth. They may have days where they're working at home, but they'll still at times have to go into the office or go into the city. I'm gonna quickly wrap up. I know I'm taking a little bit of time, but mixed use was key in the comprehensive plan. Mixed use was key in all the conversations during the discussions about Bird and Blenheim. Mixed use was key in the West area plan. It's missing in this, and that's disappointing. A lot of people brought up wanting to see nursing facilities, or doctor's offices or something. We have an aging population, and that is something that has to be acknowledged. People don't want to leave their community, and unfortunately they're being priced out. And that was a conversation I know that some of us had with the Albemarle County conversation that happened in Esmond. people are being forced out of their community because they can't afford to live here anymore. And having options for those individuals where they can stay home would be really beneficial. You know, I could go on about the internet and reliable internet in Scottsville, even if we have fiber. Come on, y'all. We can't even always get reliable power. So I just kind of bring that up. The last thing is, what is the actual expected occupancy realistically? What happens if that's not fulfilled? What happens when young professionals don't necessarily find it interesting in coming all the way down to Scottsville? And what happens as we're seeing an economic downturn? What happens if things don't come to fruition? So those are all questions that I have.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. And I would also like to publicly acknowledge you because you're at all of our meetings, constantly contributing and bringing valid points to us. So I thank you for your participation.
Thanks. Yes.
And she's an example of someone who does not live in the town limits, but is very instrumental to what we do here.
6 houses away.
Just saying, and we're working on that.
Just 6 houses. But I would be an example of a person who would want to live in a place like that. I don't necessarily want to mow a lawn, but boy, it'd be great to have a park there.
That's Stuart Munson.
Hi, I'm Stuart Munson. Live at 210 Jackson Street here in beautiful downtown Scottsville. I've been here for about 10 years and love the town, love its character. I've lived in 2 of the oldest houses in town, and keeping the character of the town is something that's really important to me. I think the history of the town is one of our greatest assets. So I think it's really important that we're careful about how we develop the town and we maintain its character. I think we do need to do something with the factory. Currently, I think it's a town liability. It's currently zoned as light industrial, which means that someone could come in tomorrow, buy it and start manufacturing things in there, shipping them out in semi trucks, and right back to where we started with the tire factory, which caused a real problem on traffic. That was before my time, but there's 4 stories of semis getting stuck on Valley Street and knocking over signs and just creating a mess. So by comparison, having an increased car flow through there seems like it's not as bad as it could be. Also, it's not a kind of a sexy property the way that some of these mill towns or the mills in New England or even our warehouse down on Canal Basin is. So it's in my humble opinion, kind of a butt ugly looking building. And if somebody can figure out something good to do with it, I think that's going to be a very advantageous thing. Not many developers are going to be interested in doing something with that piece of property. It's old, it's fallen down. And so finding someone who is willing to invest in that, I think is going to be something that we should take advantage of when we have a chance. It's an opportunity I don't think we're going to get a lot of. And the alternative is to let it sit and slowly descend, which then becomes a town more of a town hall. We also need more people in town. As I said, I love the character of this town, but having served on town council and having tried to come up with a balanced budget, it's incredibly difficult. The only reason that we have a balanced budget this year is because we got federal COVID assistance. If we did not have that, we would have to have either cut services, we would have had to increase tax rates, or we would have had to come up with some new taxes instead. So the town is not in great financial shape. And unless we want to pay more taxes as residents here, we're going to have to figure out some way to get more money into town. More people in those apartments would mean more people who would be coming down and paying meal tax, which is one of our biggest sources of revenue. We have more people putting money into the banks, which is our second largest source of revenue. And smoking more cigarettes and getting, which is not a big source of revenue, but it is another one. Yeah, that would be increased because of an increased population.
Not to mention, it's really bad for your health.
It is indeed. I do not smoke. I do not encourage anyone to smoke, and I would prefer not to get tax money that way, but that's the way the code set up currently.
I prefer not to get that way whatsoever.
Okay.
Anyway, but what's bad for your health?
Well, we could levy property tax money here. We could create a property tax, which is something that we've looked at. The real estate tax, which is something we've looked at. I, as a resident, don't want to pay more of that, but I would rather have other people coming to town who are patronizing some of their businesses.
I just look at it where I'd rather figure a problem out than to have one that's just gonna kill you, you know?
Yep.
That's why I just don't agree with that example as far as cigarettes.
Yeah. That is, I was just pointing out because that is how the town currently gets its taxes, and it would be a way that would be increased if we had more people. I like this particular proposal, and I like this particular developer, because they have had experience built with these kinds of projects in the past. This is a rather unique piece of property that takes a developer who's had some experience with these kinds of properties, developing them before. From what I have seen on the presentation, they have developed quite a few other ones like this and have been successful with doing that. They also are offering affordable housing. So when I was on council, we were looking at Bird Street. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we could get some kind of affordable housing into that SUP, and the only way I could find was for the town to buy that property and sell it to Habitat for Humanity, which the town has no money to do, and that wasn't going to happen. So the fact that we have some ability here to offer some kind of housing at rates that people who work here may be able to afford, and allow people who work here, live here, I think is something that is very commendable about this project, and we may not get any other way that I could figure that out at least. Also, they're offering to help the town build the sidewalk from the factory to Valley Street. We've looked at, when I was on town council, we looked at using some of our budget to fund some exploration and initial development of that. I opposed it. I felt that someone like someone who is developing the factory property, who is going to bring those additional people into town, should ante up and build the infrastructure to make it easy for people to walk from the factory to downtown and patronize our businesses and be part of the community. And they've offered to do that, and that's a substantial cost to build that. They're not offering to pay for all of it, but at least they're helping some. Also, they're retaining a business interest in this property, so they got some skin in the game going forward. And if you're going to be maintaining the property, it's not in your best interest to build it cheaply, because that's going to cost you more down the line. They're also have an interest in keeping encouraging full vacancy, because they've got part ownership in that as well too. However, all that being said, I think that their traffic solution is a little questionable. They have two different two different exits from the building, but they both go on Bird Street. Would it be possible to possibly talk or negotiate with the landowner to the northwest of that property to see if we could get some sort of an access road through there, or build some, or purchase access through there in some way or another, or go in through the Bird Street, use Bird Street division might be another way to do that as well too. But just dumping all of it onto Bird Street seems like kind of a way to get around the water. And it doesn't really seem like a great solution. Also, I would encourage them to consider putting in some kind of daycare. If in fact we are going to be marketing this to people who are young professionals, a daycare center there could be a selling point for those renting those units. And also it could help to address some of the need that the rest of the town has for daycare as well. Also, I guess, and then finally, I think if we can get some more people into town, that takes a little bit of the pressure off of us in terms of rushing into the PUD. I support the idea of a PUD. I think it's a big chunk of Scottsville. It's going to have the biggest impact on the character of the town, and I would like to be able to take more time than less figuring out what we as a town want to do with that. But again, we don't have a lot of, we're not financially viable. And if we could buy ourselves some more time to do that through improving what we have already, then that seems like that's the good way to move forward. So I would encourage you to support this application and see if we can make some lemonade out of this lemon that we got stuck at the other end of town.
Thank you, Mr. Munson, for your participation, and thank you for all of your service to our town over the years. You came in as a very informed speaker with your economic background. Thank you.
I have my notes if you'd like to take a look at them.
Email them to us.
Okay. Thank you for your time. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for your service.
Thank you.
Hey, Debbie Smith, I am the property owner in Scottsville and also the president of the Scottsville Chamber of Commerce. So I have comments of personal nature and comments from some of the business owners here in Scottsville. I think development's great. I think it's needed. So just because someone asked questions, I think it was mentioned earlier, they're not anti-development. There are a concerned citizen of a town that they love. In my case, I grew up here. I left. When I retired, I moved to England. I moved back to Scottsville, you know. And I think people come to Scottsville for, you know, for the soul of Scottsville. You know, you walk down the street, you see your neighbor, you see a friend, you know, and I think that will continue. I don't think that'll be hurt, but you know, I am a bit concerned about the number of apartments, and when it's fully rented out, which I believe it will. I don't have any doubt that Echelon won't do everything they say they're going to do. My concern is, and this is where it's going to fall into some of the business, some of the chamber members' concerns. And it's not going to come as any surprise. I don't, from the comments I've gotten and my personal opinion and observation, I guess is a better word to use. Scottsville, yes, it needs some help, but it needs, and money buys that help. And I've heard about, well, we could, you know, reinstate the real estate tax. I'm not sure why that ever went away, to be honest. When I brought my property here, I was paying County Scottsville and Fluvanna County tax. So, you know, that these people may move in and they may populate these businesses, which pretty much are at capacity now. Restaurants, bars, everything. And I know we're, you know, 2 to 5 years probably from this influx of residents. But, you know, we have business owners or absentee landowners, as I affectionately call them. They don't seem to want to rent their property. You know, they're happy letting it sit empty and fall in disrepair than rent it at a reasonable price for an interested business to move in. And that, you know, I hope is being looked at. I also, and this is something with, you know, that is a concern, a huge concern. Hey, we're, you know, build it and they will come. That's a great philosophy and made for a great movie. But in reality, build it and the town's not ready for it, is gonna be hell on earth for everyone. And my question is, hey, we don't have real estate tax, but we certainly did pay a lot to Albemarle County. And has the discussion started with them on getting more funds for just basic service maintenance, police, fire department, all the needed services that are gonna, escalate. The requirement of those are gonna escalate when these new residents come. I do a lot of volunteer work here in Scottsville. I appreciate everyone that gives of their time. And it would be nice to have some new blood here in Scottsville. I mean, on any committee or group I'm in, you see say 5 or 25 people at every phase, everything. It would just be nice to have either that or expand the corporate limits. So you actually do get more individuals that have a history here, that they want to be here, that they want to stay here, they want to raise their kids here, all of that. As I usually do, I'm jumping everywhere. But the concerns that's been brought to my attention are from the chamber members. All the air in these offices on the other side of this wall seems to be sucked out by development. And the care and feeding of what's already here is lacking. And I'm not saying, everybody's doing all they can, I know that, but you need more help. Again, you need people with expertise to, manage a project of this size, even though if you have a good partner and with a developer, you need people with the right skill sets, and you need to take care of what's already here. I've heard from a number of chamber members, well, we call, we never get a call back. We do this, we don't get all of what we need, we get part of it, then we have to go back to the town and get the next piece. Whatever will close that loop. It's just reality. There's a lot going on, and the town is spread thin. And this project, the townhouse project, great for Scottsville. I really do believe that. But my concern is those people not getting in their cars, going to Charlottesville, coming back home, doing whatever they need to do in Charlottesville because it's quick and easy, it's convenient, and come back home and do what they do. And they have far better internet than the rest of us do. That I have that concern as well. And quite honestly, Valley Street is not all of Scottsville. East and West Main gets little to no attention. And again, I know it takes resources to handle what's required. But, I don't, and I'd be happy to be wrong, but I don't think business tax, food tax, cigarette tax, whatever, is going to bring the required income into the town that's going to be needed for possibly 500 more people or 400 more people or 100 more people, because it's not being taken care of now. So this is a real concern that I think needs to be addressed sooner than later. Mr. Gaskin has asked for a chamber endorsement. And I'm going to put it in front of the chamber as a whole to, if they endorse it or not. I want everyone to have the confidence to endorse the town that this is, gonna. I know it's going to work out in the long run, but I just feel that if things aren't being taken care of now, why should anybody think it's going to be taken care of later?
Ms. Smith, a point of clarification, please. Did I hear you say that the businesses are at max capacity right now?
Oh, no, I'm just saying, if you go to out Friday, Saturday night. You know, most of the restaurants are packed, they're busy. And I'm sure they would love more business. But, you know, I would certainly hope additional businesses, additional bars, different, additional restaurants move in, because I don't know with the current, I mean, and you've been into a lot of these establishments, there's no more real estate in that space. You know, you can't get any more chairs in, the tables, whatever. So that's what I'm talking about. So,
Very good. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Brian, there's two.
Thank you for your patience earlier.
Oh, no problem. So my name is Brian Burnett Jr. A few of y'all know me. I'm a little over 30 years old, and I've been here in Scottsville since I was just a little kid. Started being a firefighter for Scottsville, Sid sitting back there when I was 15 years old. I know all about Scottsville, more than they'll ever know about Scottsville. You know, development is great. No issue with that. It was concerning to me when you stood up here and, you know, said that you believe that we can do it and believe in Scottsville. I just want to know exactly what exactly do you know about Scottsville that you believe in? You know, like it's easy to come to a meeting in a suit and a tie, and I get what you do, it's your job, you know, but are you in it for the long haul, for the sake of people that come to Scottsville, you know, or are you just trying to make a quick buck? You know, that's my question. I'm not, with all due respect, I'm just saying it's easy to come in here and convince everybody else to let's put up all of these apartments and bring in all these people. And like everyone else said, we got a lot of problems right here in this town that maybe you wouldn't even know about if they hadn't already told you. You know, there are going to be this many more people coming in here. 200, I mean, you know, you got an old building, and I just feel like you're trying to rush into it, you know, like think things through a little bit more and figure out ways of transportation and safety. Like we got 3 realtors in this town. We got him here, you got Larry Barnett, you got Mr. Matt here, and any more that I may not know about. You know, everybody's competing with each other. And then we get a development in here, and from then let's jump right to it. I think that the roads should be better. It should be more police officers. You know, we're a small town. We got Barnett, we got Wood, we got Jenkins. They do all that they can do, and for the, you know, for the money that they get paid. But I would just consider, I'd like to hear a little bit more on just how to jump up and say that you believe in Scottsville. And if you ever been here the 4th of July or the Battle Festival, you know, there's people everywhere, and that's just a one-time event. And you got cops coming from counties all around just to help patrol when people directing traffic. And here we're talking about bringing all these people in immediately, you know, just right off the bat. And it's easy to say like that, you know, that's all I'm saying. That's just my opinion. And I just like to hear a little bit more than we believe in Scottsville. Because unless you're like some people out here in this crowd that really has been in Scottsville for 30 years or even 10 years, I wouldn't say I believe in Scottsville unless you truly know. So I'd just like to hear a little bit more on exactly what, you know, yes, the apartments are nice, they look great, you know, that's all great. But that's like having a dusty book with a beautiful brand new cover, or pulling a cake out the oven and it's still hot, put the icing on it, let it melt, you know. You can't wait. Do you want the money that quick, or are you willing to wait with these people up here to figure out what's best for this town instead of what's best for, you know, business of your interest?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Online, request Cardinal Greer.
Hi, so I think I would just like to speak in support of the proposed project, and I'll keep it short. I think there are three main points that are good to consider. There really is a shortage of housing, and people, you know, as an architect, I've sat in, I don't know, hundreds of public hearings, and I've never, ever sat in a public hearing where anybody supported building new housing, broadly speaking. And so I think, I just think it is important because there's a whole generation that's having a really tough time finding housing. I think the other thing is that the businesses on Valley Street, and I own buildings on Valley Street, really do struggle to have enough customers. And I think that the problem with vacancy on Valley Street would be substantially resolved if there were more customers. And then I also think that this developer is really unique, and it would be a shame to kind of let them get away, because they have tremendous experience dealing with this type of project. And this is a really, really difficult site, technically and financially. And so I think that it's really a blessing that's kind of that somebody wants to tangle with this very difficult site. And so, you know, I think we should embrace them. And I think that also most of the discussions are kind of portrayed as though the choice is either this developer or nothing, like the status quo. And I think that given that the property is passing, you know, into new ownership, and it seems unlikely that it's going to be nothing. And it is a huge building. And so there's a real shortage of warehouse space. And so I think it would be a shame to pass up all of this housing and instead have, you know, some kind of distribution center where you have big, huge trucks rolling up and down Bird Street as a matter of right, which would never even see a public hearing. So for all of those reasons, I support the project.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Could we move towards Kendall Dix?
Yeah, hello. My name is Kendall Dix. I'm a renter who works from home, and I live just over the line over in Esmont. I come to Scottsville regularly to shop, eat, and socialize. I guess I would presumably be the target market for a type of development like this. My wife and I plan to raise our family here, but you know, we've talked about buying, but with interest rates going up, it's probably going to be really hard. So we may continue to rent for a while. I'm not going to claim to be an expert in this particular development, 800 Bird Street, but I would just like the commission to know that I am generally in favor of more housing in Scottsville. I don't want it to lose its character more than anyone else, but I think that more housing will actually support the vibrancy and character of the town and not take away from it. I support you, the commission, and the council taking proactive measures to create affordable housing, really by any means necessary. I agree with the last speaker that there's evidence that our region is in a housing shortage and a housing affordability crisis right now. And when there's a shortage, I think even market rate housing, there's studies that show it can help slow down increasing housing costs. I'm probably more on the other end of the spectrum. I would support Scottsville developing its own public housing as Montgomery County, Maryland has, but short of that, I think we just need more housing, especially for workers and renters. I've personally heard from several friends or other people who are looking for apartments or who have said that apartments are difficult to find in Scottsville. You know, I'm pretty active on the Facebook group, and just as I was waiting to speak, I counted like 8 posts just from this year for people looking specifically for apartments, not single family homes. And I'm sure that there's way more than those 8 who've had trouble finding apartments in Scottsville. You know, I've heard people sort of, express concern that we don't have the infrastructure to support more housing, but I kind of think that there's like a chicken and egg scenario there, you know, for the town to have more resources for infrastructure, we need a larger tax base, and for the state and county to invest more into the transportation infrastructure that connects Scottsville to other places, we need more people to sort of demonstrate that demand. As the commission, by all means, I encourage you to extract as many concessions from the private sector as possible to support our infrastructure, which I'm hearing that they have done. And I have heard that there's affordable housing sort of measures in there. I don't know if there's more or not. I'll leave that to you all. But I do just believe that we need more housing units of all kinds. And I really think that we should plan for the future, as some of the other people have suggested too. I think just in general, as the population grows or as people are moving around because of the climate crisis or something like that, I think we can expect more people to continue to flock to the region. And I think for good reason, because of its scenic beauty and the culture and all that. And so I imagine that the demand for housing in Scottsville will continue to rise. And I think the smartest way for any city to grow is to invest in dense, walkable neighborhoods connected by public transportation, which we don't really have much of right now. But if we look far into the future, perhaps we can envision Scottsville being connected to Charlottesville by public transportation or something. But the one thing that we do know is that more housing will in fact create the need for more transportation. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll leave it to you all, but I just want to reiterate that I really just think that we need more housing. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly Shipley.
Hi, Kimberly Shipley. I do live in Buckingham, but I do have a Scottsville address. Many of you know me here. I own a business in Scottsville, so do not get me wrong. By all means, more housing and more people would definitely potentially help create more revenue for businesses. And I'm sure everybody who owns business and or real estate as well will appreciate that. The things I do suggest that you consider, whether or not it's going to be multifamily housing or single professional people or just say partners together, is do look at the obvious of the roads. I do think you need to look at every possible route that cars will come out of needs to be studied and done by VDOT. The one thing I can tell you from VDOT, and I know Matt, I have spoken to you about this, is there are several things in the town that needs to be taken care of prior to you guys pushing this through. For instance, going and repainting the curbs. VDOT is supposed to be doing, and you've had a conversation with them, they have yet to show up to do this. And this has been months. Also, the other thing would be the signs for all the corners of the sidewalks and or corners from stop signs need to be correctly labeled and put up by VDOT standards. That is not completed. You also need to be looking at how people are currently parking. You may need to amend. Like they gave you an example of the one business owner. It is, I believe, Twin Bricks is what everybody calls it, where he does park a white van, and it is hard to see around. Do not get me wrong. When I leave from work, I purposely stop so that I can let people come through and let them know, hey, it's okay to go. So I suggest that you look into possible ways that people would be coming out onto Route 20 and making sure whether or not you would need to amend any of the current parking that's already there. The other thing I would suggest looking at is the current parking situation on Valley Street and or East Main to make sure that these people who would potentially be living in these apartments, if they choose not to walk, are going to be able to park on Valley Street. Or are you going to create a situation where you have all of these people who travel to and from Charlottesville to work or stay at home to work, whichever it may be? Is this going to create an issue to where you have so many people now occupying, say, all of your businesses that several people have mentioned are pretty full for the most part, at least on the weekends? Is it going to create an issue where you're not going to get new people wanting to reach out to come to Scottsville and visit and see, okay, what's the town about? I would also look at the turnover rate of people. If you're going to have it for just professional people, is it going to be a higher turnover rate versus people who want to create a family and stay long term and create more of a small town feel? And they'll feel that the majority of people in here do feel. The other things that you need to look at is the school system. I don't think anybody's mentioned anything about the school systems and transportation for that. there has been a huge shortage of bus drivers and it's not getting any better. So you need to be researching and doing studies with the school systems to see whether or not they could handle that load of people as well. Because short term, yes, you have people who are younger and professionals driving to and from Charlottesville, but at some point, you're gonna wanna create a family. And there's no way of stopping that. That's just several of the things I would look at. Your water supply as well as sewage. I know several people mentioned that. There needs to be studies done on that as well as to what the town can physically handle. Any events that the town has, how is that gonna affect things? The police, I can tell you if any issues as far as, say somebody got into an accident because the road's too narrow, or somebody had trash cans put out. There's lots of times on Bird Street, there are trash cans in the road. The police department does not come on super early in the morning, so you might have to hire more police to help with this issue, as well as directing traffic during other higher event times. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I own a business, I would love to have more customers. So I'm not saying I'm against it, I just highly suggest you do everything else that VDOT has promised you all completed before moving forward with any other projects. That's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
George Goodwin, thank you for your time again. Not many of you grew up here, but in the early 60s, to get 8 school buses off of East Main Street, we had a policeman out there every afternoon just to help hold the traffic back. Reg wasn't even here where it is now, to hold the traffic back so the buses could get out. 8 school buses, that's all. So when we talk about 205, I mean, it's 1.5 cars per apartment, pretty much, in general sense, in today's world. I have rental property. That's pretty much what it does. You're introducing a lot of traffic that has to go somewhere. Now, I'm not against the property and your business plan or anything. I'm worried about it. As growing up here, I grew up Bird Street, Harrison Street, Page Street, they were all my playground. That's where I grew up on that hill. So, yeah, we could sleigh right down the hill at Page and not worry about traffic hitting us, but you had to make sure it wasn't a shift change to the planet. Otherwise, it's gonna be a little while. So, and knowing what I at least did know about FEMA rules, I think if you're gonna build in the future or modify in the future, you ought to look at the new FEMA maps that come out in the rules, because if Lucky's was not able to change the height of the concrete island that the gas pumps are on by a height of 2 inches because FEMA wouldn't allow it. I think you've got a lot of hurdles to cross before we get to that point, and the town needs to understand from FEMA what those hurdles are. And I think also with VDOT, you ask the right question, you probably get the answer you want, is the way I've seen things happen so far. Because there are many people in this town will question why we don't have a light up at the bank, with the accidents that we've had, with new traffic patterns that are going to be brought into play with just one new business. Now, have you done those kind of studies with real, I mean, we have the largest employer for Buckingham County dumps all their employees through this town twice a day. It's UVA. Every one of them, well, 90% of them come through Scottsville. That's a big, huge amount of traffic. Nobody can parallel park on Valley Street during that time of day. Just to get the cooperation that let it happen. So, as planning commission, if you're going to introduce these type of traffic issues, you need to figure out how you're going to swallow that big elephant. It's not going to be the present streets. They can't handle it by themselves. Sure, they can handle some of it, but they can't handle all of it. And if you do push it all through, you absolutely have to amend all of the parking situations on Valley Street. I mean, even my own daughter, I'll say, shouldn't park on Valley Street during the day when businesses are open. You're asking for trouble. We have, I mean, her own vehicle's been hit 3 times.
Yeah, we've had multiple issues.
3 times.
Within an hour.
We've been asking you
Within
to
an
walk
hour.
that.
And the tires were up against the curb. So, I mean, every time I park there, I have to bring the mirrors in. It's too narrow already. We all know that. But
2-hour parking should be enforced.
please look at what else can be done before you move forward. I mean, I don't think any real studies have been done. You haven't necessarily completed the plan. You're looking at giving a permit and now figure out how to make it work. It doesn't work that way. A complete business plan has all the questions answered. So I think that has to happen. And I don't believe it has.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You return online to Dan Ball.
Yes, thank you. I'm Dan Baum. I live nearby at a local farm, and my wife who spoke earlier, we've invested in Valley Street, putting our money where our mouth is because we're new here. We love the town. We saw the need for the town to have some renovations, and we're doing that. But we want to, I want to speak in favor of the future of Scottsville. And I think the future of Scottsville is benefited by this proposal. And so I support it. And I know from listening to meetings and attending a few meetings, you often hear people that come to meetings come to oppose. And you may in fact see, I've noticed some of the same voices oppose projects again and again. And so I wanted to be a new voice speaking in favor of this project and just briefly address the concern that's been brought up a few times, which is traffic. And having researched it at the Scottsville Library, the factory in the 60s and 70s had 340 shift workers working 3 shifts a day. So it's 340 people coming and going. And then in around 2002, it went down to 240. And so in addition to all these employees coming and going to the factory, you of course had trucks bringing supplies and taking goods away. And so in the past, not too long ago, there was quite a bit of vehicular traffic. And so the idea is that the roads can't handle it, is just not supported by that history. And I do think that this is a very unique opportunity. And if I told you that, we've all paid our federal taxes and now there's going to be a couple of people driving down from Washington, D.C. with a big fat check for $24 million to help Scottsville into the future, hopefully they would be welcomed warmly. That is what is happening here through the Historic Tax Renovation Credit Program. And it's a very difficult program to administer, to deal with the paperwork and the staffing and actually the construction to historic standards. And so the fact that we have a developer here that's willing to do it is a really special situation. And I think that the town will make a very large mistake if it does not welcome this development warmly, does not move things along quickly, and does not form a partnership here, because you're going to miss this developer doesn't need to develop in our town. They can move to the next town. But yet this is a huge opportunity to, kind of address some of the problems of an aging population, of a shrinking population, of a Valley Street that is significantly vacant. The businesses that are there need more customers. And so, I think that while traffic is an issue, it is an issue that we can find solutions for and that we can work as a community over time. And you have, 2 or 3 years, maybe more during construction to work on this constructively. And I'll close with this, that one thing worse than traffic is no traffic at all. It's not existing as a town. And I do fear that if Scottsville, turns its nose at these opportunities that are being presented, that's a very real risk, for Scottsville, and that we should welcome newcomers and new entrepreneurs and people that can help. And I think in the end, we would end up with a lot of neighbors that can bring a lot of positive things to the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we move forward to Bill Delaney?
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bill Delaney. I live at the corner of Bird and Harrison Street. I've lived here a little over 2 years now. With all due respect, I don't, my wife and I are not opposed to growth. We're not opposed to additional housing. However, we live the reality of what the traffic is downtown. We know what it's like to drive on Bird and Harrison. We do so every day. We park there. And the infrastructure, as has been mentioned, is not adequate to support much more than what we already have. With all due respect, Mr. Baum, there may have been hundreds of more traffic 50 years ago, but it is dangerous sometimes just to go down Bird Street as it is today and try and turn onto 20. So until such time as you have a good, solid plan to be able to deal with all of these infrastructure plans with the ingress and the egress, as well as all of the other mentions that have gone on thus far in terms of other services, you're not in a position to consider to approve such a substantial addition to the downtown area. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any more on my sign-up sheet, so if anybody.
Kevin Quick here, talking to you guys. The folks out there probably may not know exactly sort of how I feel, but this is where I want y'all to understand. 29 years coming in every day. I don't think anybody else here could raise a hand who's going to Scottsville to work every day for 29 years. Okay. To sit here and hear how far we've come to maybe considering development is insanely crazy. Okay. I'm really happy to see where we are right now with an opportunity in front of us. However, I will preface it or step back and say, what we're looking at right now is something we have not seen in 29 years. What we're seeing is growth from the 29 homes that we're talking about putting up there, never been done in the town of Scottsville. Okay. How is that going to shake out? How's that going to turn out? Then you throw in another 205. Okay. What's it going to be like? Okay. What are the numbers? Numbers do not lie. Look at your numbers. If we're talking about how much money is going to be coming in, run the numbers. Mr. Baugh, I don't know Mr. Baugh, but he talked about the plant. The plant was a generating income asset for the town of Scottsville. They really weren't going to get a whole lot of negativity because they were bringing a lot of money in to the town. This is houses. Where's the money coming at from the houses? We talked about the taxes. You run 25 bucks a person, two times, 7 days a week. You're looking at like 80,000. Does 80,000 change it? And is everybody going to eat out that much every week? Look at the numbers. Food Line goofed when they did their demographic study. They built it a little bit too small. They didn't think the business was going to be here. Okay. Don't buy into the fact that somebody else may not come behind these folks. I like these folks. Don't get me wrong. They got a great company. They do great things. But what I don't want us to do is, in the interest of progress, we don't think that progress and look at the unintended consequences. And maybe they're just a little early. Maybe they're just early. We're not negative as far as don't do anything. It's like, what's going to happen? And all I'm saying, I guess, is look at the numbers. The numbers are not going to lie. Numbers don't lie. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quick.
Matthew Holt. First off, I think your company does really good stuff. And I would love for you guys to talk to Tiger Pool and see if you can do that up there in the shopping center. We don't need to be historical, we need to be saying, and I don't think anyone would be fussing if this proposal was above the shopping center. And they got all the parking, it's got access, 3, 4 roads, traffic is all there, it's the commercial zone. No one's asking for rezoning. To me, that's around, paved and round hole. I think unfortunately, the difficulty with this site is it's square peg and a round hole. And we're not gonna fuss, at least I'm not gonna fuss about everything. We've heard it all before. We've heard nothing's different. Traffic, right? Infrastructure, we've heard it all, safety. The thing that is different is we were talking 36 homes coming down Bird Street. Now we're talking 205 units, they're not homes. But when you get into what the police chief put together, talking anywhere between Bird and the housing, 331 to 617 people. When you get into that kind of number, you're talking doubling the population of our town. It's pretty quickly. We're putting it all on a couple of acres up there, like 15, 20 acres maybe. And it's all going to be funneling down underneath one road. That's a square peg and a round hole. We'll see how to get around it. We could put another road in, but no one wants to do that. As long as that's not going to happen, let's go right back to a lot of traffic, a lot of the issues. Police, the fire department, when I talk to them, their plan, they have no equipment, they have no ability to put fire out in that tire factory. Their plan was to let it burn to the ground and contain it, make sure it doesn't spread. Obviously, that plan would have to change, but that's called an impact. And who's going to pay for that cost? Right? Police department, we're talking about putting on extra police. Impact, who's going to pay for it? There's a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to go into because you guys have all heard me speak about it before. And that's the important one. But I do think that if you approve this, I don't see how the town's not going to have the residential tax. I don't think that's a threat. I don't think some people have a problem with it. Some people do or don't. I think it'll be considerable because we're going to have to pay for it. But like I said, I wish that was being done up to Tiger Fuel. Really encourage us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Mr. Holt is also someone who attends our meetings regularly and often has a lot of insights for us. So thank you for your participation in all of our meetings.
Anybody else in public present? Anybody online?
Thank you for letting me say additional thing. I got a little concerned when I heard one of the gentlemen online tell you don't let you should feel if you don't have this proposal go through in an expedited manner. Let's move right out and things this way. I think everything in its time. It has to be measured. A lot of different people have brought up a lot of different concerns. It's a very professional group here. They can probably help you sort out an awful lot of it. But until they're sorted, the last thing you want to do is have 600 and some additional people living in that one spot. And the next thing you know, your town has changed and you have no ability to get it back. They have to be able to work through the process. And the process should take time because it's permanent. just leave that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pugh, are you coming up here to speak?
Oh, no, I was gonna walk over there. I don't think we'll hear what I say. I can say one thing, like the sidewalks, they said put a sidewalk in, where you put it at? The road's not wide enough for 2 cars left, so. And you got a historical house, old hall right down that road. I'm sure you know all that. I don't mind having the building, but you gotta do the road stuff first, like everybody said, so. That's my opinion. Thank y'all. I'm out there.
He does make a very good point that study should be done and or looked into as far as the sidewalks, since I know that was part of the deal for development. As far as looking into that, because you have people who are not willing to give up potentially part of their land or figure out how much of the land VDOT actually physically owns and how that's going to impact. Say you have a library, for instance, you're going to come down through. It's already hard enough at the library to you can pull into the space, but backing out of that space is difficult because you're pointing at an angle as well. So you guys really need to consider that as far as sidewalks go to allow people to walk to and from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think really the summation of what you heard tonight, if I'm hearing it right, you need some more answers before you vote.
Yeah, so let me just clarify the process a little bit. And Mr. Goodman, you know this better than most. We do have a process. There's we have an obligation to the petitioner to make a recommendation to town council within a period of time. So our obligation is to report to town council and say we either recommend you move forward with this and approve it, or we recommend you deny this application. So we will sit with this and ask all of the questions that we have and follow up on all of your questions. And some of your questions we do have answers to because there have been studies. And we'll be elaborating on that more. And we're probably going to need to have a work session to talk about this a lot more. But we'll do a lot of research and then we'll make a recommendation to the town council, and Mr. Gritzko as the town council liaison will help pass along some information. And some of our town councilors are here tonight. And there will be yet another hearing at that point in time, and you're certainly invited to attend that too. But a lot of research will be done. A lot of this will be discussed in more detail. And some of the reports that we have can be made available if they're not already part of our agenda packets. They will be made available for you in the future. But just the conversations that we had tonight makes me think, you know, let's as a body, well, is there anyone else that would like to speak before I close the public portion of the hearing?
Mind if I say one more thing?
Please.
Matthew Holt. I just haven't gone through the small area plan, being on that committee for 6 months. And haven't gone through all the stuff with her and everything else. It kind of drove a wedge in our community. People were pointing fingers at each other and all that kind of stuff. If this stuff is going to change your mind, then I think it's valid to take a look at it. I think if you guys have already kind of got an idea and what you're going to propose, because as you said, I just ask you not to drag it out too much. Because I think that's what happened with Bird. Every time it's just another month for another thing, and another thing, and another thing. And in the end, we all voted the same way. I don't think all of that time spent changed much. Does that make any, you're looking at the kind of puzzle?
Well, I guess I'm looking
I'm
at.
not saying rush it, I'm just saying don't.
Yeah, no, well,
Do it because you're looking for an answer, don't do it because that might make your answer feel better. Does that make sense?
Well,
And not you.
yeah, I don't know. I haven't polled all of my commissioners. I don't know everyone's opinions on it.
Right.
And so I don't think we have a decision made. I don't think it's like in the bag or anything. And I certainly don't think, not that you've suggested it, but I've seen this suggested in the past that, you know, perhaps people are getting kickbacks, which is crazy. I'm not aware of anyone getting that. And I'm not saying anyone here has said that, but it has been said in the past. And I don't think that anyone here is like let's do this, or hopefully no one here is dead set against it to the point where we can't have a conversation. And that's what this is about. It's about hearing from the public, making sure that we're considering everything. And it takes time, and we will give it that time that it deserves. And I don't think it's dragging it out just to say, yes, it's moving forward, because I don't think that decision has been made, at least not in this body. And I don't think town council has made their decision either. So we will want to go through all these issues and talk about it in more detail.
I get that. My point is that these are issues that we've already discussed when we doing plan.
Well,
Bird and stuff like that. Yes, and my point is volume. My point is, like with myself, I don't care what's the program, you're not gonna tell me that all that traffic coming down curve is gonna somehow be different. So, you know, I'm saying with me. So my point is another study you think gonna change my view on that? Probably not. Fire department issue, yeah, that's gonna be something that would have to be developed, or else they can't develop it. They gotta be able to put it out. I'm saying there's impact on that. So that's what I'm saying, it's something that warrants, it, right? Then by all means, it's investigated. But it's something like my example, with just personally me, I don't care what's the, you're not gonna change my mind on the traffic, right? To me, that's important. I don't think I should have to go through the traffic study. It's not gonna change my mind. And that's not a decision we make tonight. It's stuff we can talk about. I just want to put that out there, because we've been through this before, and it didn't go, not bad, right? There are people that don't talk to each other and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just putting that out there. That's all.
Okay.
And I drive a Volvo that's 1984, so if anyone wants to pay me off. I don't have a boat, okay?
I say take your time. So I think that the comments that I heard were a whole lot different than we heard earlier on in the first street. And to me, that's a progress. The next step is you're talking.
One of the things we would want to do is take some time, whether it's the next month or the next 2 months, we would take time to deliberate, consider what you all have said, have our own opportunity to chat with each other, and also get further input from our staff and review information from studies that have already been done. Also talk to the potential designers and builders. So, I mean, it's a process that happens, and we want it to happen so we make good public policy, bottom line.
For me, I think that there's been so much talk about infrastructure that there seems to be a real deficit there in relation to what might be happening. And I think it's worth looking into, so.
Yeah, well, we've talked a lot about infrastructure over the years, but
Yeah.
when we were talking about 36 units, 205 units is
Yeah.
different.
I think that, the safety issues and the fire department and everything, it's a little more intense, a little more planning might be a good thing. Which is what we do, right?
So with that, I'd like to close the public portion of the hearing, right? Last call. Anyone online? Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting, and now we're going to begin our discussion. So obviously a lot of issues were raised, and really great points, not, coming in here saying, this is awful for our town, we don't want this, but rather we really need to talk about these things. And that's what we're here to do. I heard a lot, definitely infrastructure. We talked about VDOT traffic. We talked about sidewalks. We talked about our narrow streets and how difficult it is to navigate them as it is right now. We talked about safety, school buses, the lack of sidewalks and people not having the walkability, trash cans in the street, FEMA, flood plan, going back to our PUD and interconnectivity, commercial or lack of it in this case. We talked about affordability, the desire to bring in new blood and get more folks to use our services here and go to our stores. At this point, we do have traffic studies. We have an updated traffic study. This might be a good time to bring that up.
I have a question. The traffic studies for Bird and the factory, are they combined?
They make a comparison together.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, do you mean the house project?
I'm just saying, as far as the numbers are concerned, are we looking at both of those together as far
Yes,
as?
they
Okay.
count the total trip generation of both projects, the one
Okay.
approved and the one under consideration.
Yeah,
So
I
the
wasn't
impact's
sure.
definitely stacked.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, so those.
Mhm.
Do you want to say something about your methodology?
Sure.
There were a lot of questions about which intersections are affected and what we need to think about, both current VDOT concerns that we need to get on and what might need to change in the future.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear
sure.
more about that.
If that's all right with you all. My name is Steve Schmidt, I work with Timmons Group, I'm a traffic engineer. And we did the traffic study for the project. Just to speak for a moment about methodology, traffic studies are like a big layered birthday cake. We went out, we did existing traffic counts, the public schools were in session. Just kind of take a look at what's out there today, what's the baseline. From there, we did add in the other 36 homes that are under development, what that traffic will generate as well. We also said there's probably something going on north and south of town, east and west, that we're really not aware of yet. So we also applied then a 1% growth rate to all of that traffic as well. And that's what we call our background conditions. That's what the future is going to look like with or without this development, excuse me. And then from there, we did layer in the traffic for the proposed development as well to see what the net sum total would be. As far as the traffic studies up here, it is available on the town site as well. As far as what intersections we looked at the intersections where the traffic would be most impactful, right? So all along Bird Street, and then where Bird hits Valley Street, along Main Street where Main hits Valley Street. We concentrated on the center of town, the intersection shown up here on the map right now, because that's where the traffic will go first. From there, we'll get dispersed out further, and then to other intersections north and south, and again east and west, or mostly east of town.
Did you do those other intersections also?
We did not. This is the extent of the traffic study.
Okay.
But yeah, so predominantly we looked at vehicular traffic, we counted pedestrians, we counted bicycles. And right there, these are the existing traffic counts out there. So today you see that in the AM peak hour, turning from Bird Street onto Valley Street, the volume is very low. It's if you head that way. We counted 6 vehicles making a left turn. We didn't count any other vehicles in the morning. The numbers outside of the parentheses are the AM peak hour. So generally the time that people are leaving to go to work in the morning, 7 to 8, 7:30, 8:30, somewhere in that range. The number inside the parentheses are the PM peak hour, the traffic that would be the opposite of that when people are coming home. And then we also looked at the average daily traffic, which is that number in the box there, that 1,000 1,000 on Bird Street, 7,000 on Valley. That is the traffic you would expect on an average 24-hour period. That's the traffic that again is there today. And again, from there, we layer traffic on top to get our final numbers as well. I will say we also did do the comparison between the factory, what the factory would generate at fully occupied versus what we're going to generate today. And the interesting thing is AM and PM peak hours, it's about the same. That table is, I think it's table 6, but in the AM and PM peak hour, it will really do no difference in the amount of traffic from what the factory would generate versus what the apartments would. It's a very different nature of traffic, right? There's a lot of trucks, there's a lot of shift work, traffic heading out at the exact same time, coming in at the exact same time. This traffic, yeah, table 6. This traffic will be spread out more across the hour. So I'm happy to answer any questions. It's a very detailed study. There's a lot in there. With the results of it indicate that the intersections operate from a capacity standpoint, from a queuing standpoint. We grade our intersections level of service, it's A through F. It's a lot like a school grade. except we do include E as well. The intersections in town during the peak hours are operating at a level service A or B. Layering on all the traffic, it will continue to operate at the level of service A or B. There will not be any queuing concerns during the peak hours. Sorry, sir.
I just said, really? It seemed like that there's.
The comments don't feel like an A grade. The difficult sightlines.
Sure, okay, now that's
tricky intersections.
Okay, and then
pedestrian facilities.
You're absolutely right. Let's
There's
be very clear, this is a capacity queuing, was what I was speaking to only. Certainly, there are intersections that have sightline concerns. Bird at Valley, trying to turn from Bird onto Valley. If you're looking left, looking north, that building is in the way. That's a site issue concern. There are certainly some considerations that need to be done. We did also look at a crash history in the area as well, to see how many crashes have occurred over the last 5 or 6 years. That's in the study as well. So we try to be as comprehensive as we can. We recognize and realize that there are challenges with the intersections in town. Need some help, but that's, from an analytical standpoint, we heard earlier tonight that the numbers don't lie. These are the numbers, and what this study was done according to VDOT standards, according to all national standards. And those are the results of the study.
Mr. Kerr.
I'd like to ask, but so, what you're saying to me is that if we put 200 cars on that factory lot, and we start at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on a rainy morning, have them all come, 90% of them want to turn left to go to Charlottesville, you're not going to create a traffic problem beyond anything that's going to be manageable?
Not all traffic will leave in one at the same time.
I said 7 to 9, and if you have 200 apartments, you can have 300 to 400 cars, or 300 to 500 cars. So if half of them, and these people are going to be going north, there's no real, or they're going to be going across the intersection of Savannah or Charlottesville, they're not turning right going into Buckingham, very few cars there. So my question is, if they're at that corner of the tavern, and they're going to be turning to go north or trying to go across the street, you're saying if you have 200 cars trying to leave there over the course of 2 or 3 hours on a rainy morning, that you're not going to have problems, traffic backed up, all kinds of people waiting 15 minutes to turn left, and all this kind of stuff? I mean, I'm just having is that all factored into your study? Because what I say is you're going to go to Harrison and create problems up there, and we have legitimate complaints about the road getting too thin. People come up there. I'm just having a hard time believing that it's not going to cause a problem at that intersection, because I just know what it does, like on even Farmers Market or 4th of July or anything else. It's getting left out of there for a while.
Sure. Now we look at what we consider to be a typical day, a typical weekend. We can't account for
Yeah,
all.
we gotta go worst case scenario. You can't go typical day. You gotta go, it rains once every other week, so you gotta go at least a semi worst scenario, not snowstorm, but a kind of a tough day at dusk or this or that, or whatever's going on.
Sure.
So you don't think it's gonna cause a problem?
Well, again, the standards are, the VDOT standards.
I don't care about standards, that's what I think it's gonna cause. a
All right,
problem.
all right, Mr. Carr, thank you. I think your point was made, but I do want to maintain some, structure here. So I don't think at this point we're going to be able to respond to questions from the audience. Please write them down. We actually do have other agenda items, and well, I don't want you to go just yet.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm saying, if we open up the floor to comments, we're not gonna, but I mean, yeah, definitely we need to consider more than just a typical day. But we also don't want to think about the 4th of July. Everyone recognizes that we're going to have to do something with the traffic pattern. The pattern we have is not going to sustain more cars on the road. So what recommendations would you make about the flow of traffic right now? If we have this development, what would you recommend we do?
Well, I'll say that the numbers indicate that from a capacity and queuing standpoint, the existing intersections as they are today can handle this traffic on a typical day. Now, we can talk about whether that's the right thing to look at or not. That's the standard. That's how all traffic studies are done for developments, for VDOT, for municipalities, as we look at a typical day.
Do you think that's how we should look at it?
Well, I think that, we've got to start somewhere. We've got to plan for something. There's a danger in, if you try to account for 4th of July traffic, which I've heard about, every day, you're gonna end up overbuilding your roads, you're gonna end up, overbuilding your infrastructure for things that happen once or twice a year. So you need to look at what is normal, what happens most of the time. And recognizing that, yes, sure, there are some times that you will need police traffic out, the police directing traffic, but then also in the middle of the night, there's no traffic. So we're not designing to that standard either. We want to design for a typical weekday, the typical peak hour when people are coming in and going out. Because that's what happens 70%, 80%, 90% of the time. We're like recognizing there's outliers on both sides.
Can we ask one question, not to try to, not buzz anything, but just one single question about.
Well, if you
what he's
ask
saying?
one question, then
It's what he's saying, that you're saying peak and normal, okay? Realistically, 7 to 8 o'clock is when most people are leaving the work. So it's not 7 to 9. And then you're presenting numbers that I believe are average over the day, not only peak. Because if you measure just Valley Street, not all these other intersections, Valley Street traffic between 7 and 8 and then 4 to 5, you're gonna have dramatically different numbers.
Sure. And I'll just speak again, try to keep as quickly as I can. The numbers you see here are the worst 1 hour period in the morning.
That's the highest number on the graph.
That's the highest number in any 1 hour in the morning and the highest hour in any one hour in the afternoon. So it does represent the worst, the 7 to 8. I can actually tell you the exact peak hour they were, but the AM peak hour occurs from 8 to 9 in the morning and the PM is from 4:30 to 5:30. That is what the counts, the data indicates. So that is, you are seeing 1 hour numbers there. The traffic that we're layering on in table 6 is 1 hour volumes. So that's just if I can. So I
Can
just
you
speak to the process.
make that just?
Yeah, the largest number on the chart is 448. That's the number going northbound in the morning, right? Or, I'm sorry, between parentheses.
Yes, morning, that's correct.
Morning.
448,
right, parentheses is PM.
that's correct.
So that's Valley Street.
Mhm.
What intersection is that for
That is Valley
those who
and
don't
Bird.
have
That is Valley and Bird Street. Yeah.
Bird Street?
I think what we should absolutely do now before, I mean, that it needs to be done now, whether or not this development happens, is Valley and Bird Street, that problem needs to be solved. And then when you have cars coming out of this intersection, they aren't all piled up waiting to get a good line of sight to get out on Route 20. So I don't know why that can't be fixed tomorrow, because that's something the town can.
Yeah,
control.
and
We don't need
we've
to do
talked
that.
about that.
So, yeah, we've talked about it ad nauseum, so I would like to see some movement on that. And maybe if we started making some of these good faith efforts to fix the problems now, people would be more receptive to projects such as this.
But keeping in mind that whatever fix we do right now may not be a long-term solution or for a project of this size, and it may have to be changed. So if we make a change right now, and then if we put in 200 units, for example, that change may need to be reversed. I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking more of like the line of sight.
Right.
Onto 20.
Yeah.
That can
Yeah, I
help
was
people
wondering
get
about that.
out faster in the mornings. I don't even go.
On
out that
Bird.
way.
Yeah.
I go out Harrison.
What-
Because I can't.
My speak a little bit because of that, and that should be included in your study, is that the majority of people are avoiding it. Because you cannot physically see. I can tell you, I have come to wrap around my store and come down Bird, you cannot physically see.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'd like to see is we need to talk about Harrison. We need to talk about, and when I say Harrison, I'm referring to the intersection where
It's
Warren, thank you. And continuing down, when you look around to Valley, because it's true, people do use Harrison to avoid those not great intersections at
Right, we
Valley.
did look at Harrison and Valley. But yes, to your point, to extend,
To Warren.
we did not this time.
Yeah. I mean,
Where's
I
Harrison
think
Valley?
These are some easy problems that we can fix now that exist with or
Intersection.
without
Yeah.
any new project.
Intersection number 1.
I think that's an important point of clarification on the responsibility of it. That a number of the comments were to existing maintenance concerns that we have the responsibility of working with our VDOT staff on, and it's frankly not the developer's obligation to fix that. It's between the town government and VDOT to do. Curb painting, where trash cans are placed, where vehicles are parked. We can do parking enforcement and curb painting now, and we should. And I want to kind of clarify the legal obligation of what kind of problems are the developer's responsibility to try to fix, and which ones are very legitimate issues that we have to deal with. Right. And should.
Is there anything we should do to make sure that that's moving forward, since we have talked a lot about it?
If you think that there are planning study issues that are connected to, but sort of beyond the scope of this application, like one of the public comments had to do with the James River Road intersections. Current safety and sightline issues, which will not be helped by increased traffic from this development, and are in our comprehensive plan to look at.
Yeah.
We have not had much luck generating the study interest on that, but to come out of this meeting with a sense of urgency that those really do need attention, and it's not the developer's obligation to rebuild this intersection, but we need to talk about that.
Right, yeah. I mean,
So
if we
yeah.
make it worse first,
Right.
that's not gonna work.
No, you don't want to be in a situation where VDOT is responding to a crash issue. We see the potential.
Okay. Would it be possible to do Harrison and Valley, not Harrison and Valley, I'm sorry, Warren?
We can discuss it.
Yeah, what,
James River Road?
well, do we think that there's going to be much more additional traffic? How much more traffic do you anticipate on Valley? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Going up north out of town, how much more traffic do you anticipate on 20?
In the range of 500 to 600 vehicles a day, spread out over the course of the day. So again, there's 7,000 out there today, so. Perhaps
You really think there's going to be 500 more cars on the road because of this development each day?
So, yeah, if, going back to the table 6, again, based on national averages of similar developments, this sum total, this development will generate in the neighborhood of 1,500 trips a day.
To Charlottesville.
That does not take, it's a straight number of units, does not take into account, is there one bedroom, is there 4 bedroom? It's just a straight average, absolutely correct.
I think it's fair to point out that those are conservative, they are high, and it doesn't include things like work from home trends.
Right, this is data that has been assimilated over the course of the past 20 years, so this is a recent trend. It also isn't necessarily geared towards a town like Scottsville where those are more walkability. I mean, this is a mix of every study around the country, urban, suburban, completely rural, where everyone's driving. So they're the best numbers that we have at this time. We expect them to be lower given the unit mix, given the nature of the town of Scottsville.
Which bring a conservative number in case any constructive saying we're justified, we want to err on the side of the building to change versus not. That's correct.
But I think this would be a good opportunity to get creative and have some public transportation options to Charlottesville in the morning. I would love that.
Oh, amen.
I could sit on a bus and get some work done or read a book instead of driving down Route 20 every morning and coming home every afternoon. That would be pretty awesome.
To our credit, we do have the Jaunts.
Right.
Bus, which does service us, but we definitely.
I think Jaunt is wonderful, but I have experienced Jaunt, and it's not really on your own timetable
Oh, no, not at
or
all.
even close to it.
Yeah.
So that
It's like
does.
5:30 a.m., but
Do we, so before we release the Timmons group, would we recommend any other spots to research. I would like to see Harrison and Warren. I'd like to see Warren and Valley. I'd like to know how many cars are on James River Road right now from Warren to James River Road going up to the shopping center.
I frankly would like to know about hardware and 20.
Do we already know about hardware in 20? That's not on here either. Okay. Now, I mean, I don't know how much more traffic would be going up that way or down that way because it's not really much over there, except the Van Cleef. But it's interesting to look at because it's already a rough intersection. There's not a lot of visibility there. And
There's
then
no visibility there.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you know, sometimes you just kind of pull out and cross your fingers.
I do. You're right.
Your report is up at the Charlottesville office for their engineers' comments. I'll pass along that question and try to get a neutral second opinion about whether those intersections sort of belong in the model.
Thank you.
And then if Mr. Wilson comes back with, hey, we need to include these, that's good professional feedback to kind of include in the mix.
Matt, I think that's a key point that you just made, and I want to be careful how I say this because we can cherry pick all kind of different intersections. I think the point is what's relevant to what we know. There might be 40 relevant intersections. I'm not saying I know what they are, but there's ways to know what they are. And I think, Matt, to double check with these guys to figure out, because there are other intersections that have been mentioned that seem relevant, but we need to figure out, is that relevant in terms of the study that would be how that we would be using the right methodology so that we, again, make good public policy on it. Because otherwise we could say, oh, I want that one or this one, but we need to do what's right related to the study itself.
Right. I mean, I agree with that. I think it's pretty clear, though, that Harrison is going to be overutilized. And, you know, our definition of what traffic is going to be different than what VDOT says. So then we as a community should still make a decision about what we think makes the most sense. You know, we have small streets, we have two ways, maybe they need to be one ways, and VDOT may not see a problem because there's not enough car traffic to get their attention, but that doesn't mean that we agree. Okay. Any other questions for the Timmons group? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so Matt, let us know about that. Update us on what VDOT says about what intersections merit a little bit extra
Definitely.
research.
I'd like to raise a point about the timing that you mentioned, and which meetings are kind of candidate for this. You talked about the requirement to report out in a timely fashion. It's 90 days.
90 days.
So your November meeting is the next regular meeting, but you could push out to the week after Thanksgiving. Would get you within your 90 days if you needed 3 more weeks after your one next week. So you're not rushed to call a special meeting like next week in order to give this more time. You could get it out on the other side of Thanksgiving and still be okay. But December 6th would be too late.
Okay, gotcha. So our December meeting's too late, but we do have until after October, after the November meeting. Okay.
Are there other questions that struck you as big research needs where you really think we need to hustle on some research work after now? Some of these things I jotted down, like I know we have answers to the public on. Was there anything that struck you as like, oh, this is brand new, I haven't thought about this before?
Well, we, fire department and medical, because we've definitely talked in the past about how we have capacity to handle 36 more homes when it comes to that infrastructure, but 200 is different. And because of the complexity of where this site is located, the geographical boundaries, it's a little bit more complicated to get in and out of. So that raises questions in addition to the size of it. Agreed. And yeah, I'm interested in talking more about the budget and balancing the budget. I know that's a town council consideration, but are we banking on this community adding enough tax dollars in the form of spending at our restaurants and, unfortunately, cigarettes? Or we talked about a one-time infusion of $80,000 for the construction business license. That's great, but we can't bank on that in the long term. So how much of the property taxes do we get from Albemarle County?
None of it is carved off by formula back. So when you pay that real estate tax bill, that goes to the county treasury and they don't revenue share that straight back. Your car tax decal, they do. So when your car tax has like a $30 base fee plus added value, you do get the $30 back. As far as all these people have, if that's 500 shiny new cars. great.
Assuming they register their car at this
Yes, you do that
location,
correctly.
and if they're
Hopefully they're new-
transient.
Hopefully they're new expensive cars. That's the key.
One of the things, Madam Chair, just a comment would be, I think sometimes we get lost in the debate, so to speak, because ultimately right now we have a factory that's not being used. And that we have a business entity that's interested in coming into the town. And I didn't hear anybody here tonight that spoke that lived here before 1944. And what I mean by that is, if anybody who's lived in the town of Scottsville for a factory that was operating for 65 years and then 13 years wasn't active would realize that if you had a property that you had, you would recognize that that factory is desperately going to be trying to find a new opportunity, whether it materializes as a residential place, whether when I was on the economic committee before Stuart was, we were being encouraged to try to open a factory here. That was very real. That Faith McClintock, the director of the county economic development, was encouraging us to go that route, which would have put those large trucks here, which is very, very viable, that we don't have many of those sites in the county. So I simply am saying that anybody who owns property in that area would recognize there's a factory that's been there, and the owner and the town have an opportunity to be good stewards and to try to encourage that to come back. And so I recognize there's legitimate traffic issues, legitimate traffic concerns. They've always been there. They've been there since 1944. And to say that they haven't been there is a misunderstanding of both the property historically and the property in the future. So I understand that I think there should be a lot of studies done and creative research in terms of how we address the houses that are already going to be built on Bird Street. And on the other hand, when we think of this vacant factory, when we think of the architectural design that's there and this entity that's interested in coming into Scottsville, bringing enormous resources here and willing to work with us as a town, I think it's important to recognize that there's nothing hidden about the process. That's been a factory that's been there for a long, long time. And because it's been there, any property owner anywhere near though would have to recognize what that means, that at some point it might reopen as a factory, or it might reopen as another industry, or it might reopen in this form. So I have some concern with residents when they start talking about traffic as if it's something new or some type of issue about people saying that this hasn't been thought about or this hasn't been researched. It was a functioning factory for 65 years. It was a place that for the last 13 years, the town has been really working to try to get to this place. And again, I'm not trying to minimize the issues that people have, but to say people are surprised that we are actually wanting to see a factory that's there, our other option with the factory is to do nothing with it and to let it just go to the wayside where it has been. So I'm simply saying again, in good faith, if you ask real estate agents, we have some here, they would point out to people who are renting or buying houses in those areas that there is a factory here and something may happen with that factory in the future. And I'm sure that when they talk to people, they make sure that that's understood. So there's nothing hidden about this. And I guess I object to the sense that people are surprised that there could be more traffic, or there's going to be more traffic if we do something. And so I'm just simply saying, again, as we think about this site, which was an active factory for 65 years, and for 13 years has been looking at a number of different options. The reason actually one of the people presented here that the firing range didn't happen wasn't because we decided not to do it, the county decided to do it elsewhere. And there's also a lot of inaccurate understandings about the site itself. So I just want to make sure when we go forward, as we have a robust discussion or robust dialogue, that we're factual, that we look at it and we understand how that is. I think you have something you want to say.
Yes, I do. I don't know, are these our only options? Just this or nothing? Is that what you were saying, or were you saying?
What
that
I'm saying is
making a change to what it is now?
You mean me specifically? Okay, so what I'm saying is we've known all along that this is an unused factory site. And there's been a number of efforts that have gone and looked at, there was a distillery that looked at it, there was the firing range, there was a number of things that people have kind of considered options. We finally got a point with a small area plan and also to where this offer is. So I'm not smart enough to know what else is out there. I know a friend who's an entrepreneur who had interest also in the past, and we had been told for a number of years that nobody was interested in it. That simply was factually not true. But so we have these people here in good faith with an offer or what they plan to do. Do I know what else might happen out there? No, I'm not smart
Okay,
enough to
you
know
just
that.
seem definitive. I just was
Well, the
curious.
definitiveness is simply to say that it's a site that has a history of being an industrial, a factory, and anybody who would want to live around there would recognize it's like living near an airport and saying, I don't like planes. You know, I happen to live on Route 20 and you've heard me say before, I didn't want the Dollar General to move next door, but I didn't stop it because I as a town councilor could have tried to stop it. I did not do that. I thought against my own personal interest, the right thing to do was to allow it to be built across the street from my house. Even to this day, it's the least thing I like about where I live, but I allowed it to be done for the people of Scottsville. And I mean that for real. And so what I'm simply saying is, I think as a town, we need to make lots of decisions like that may be slightly uncomfortable to us, but are better for the town, but better for other people.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, one more thing. The other thing I was going to talk about is, I don't think I'm surprised about the traffic. You know, I know that kind of thing is going to change. I just don't think our downtown area gives enough room for that. Like other towns may have more room to put in wider streets or, you know, sidewalks and things of that nature. I don't think we have anything like that.
Yeah.
And so that's the concern. Extra traffic is going to make that situation worse, I believe.
So, and I agree, but was that factually accurate that there were 340 cars that were commuting 3 times a day to and from the tire factory, or is that 340 cars total per day?
Total employees.
So 340 cars per day going to and from the tire factory.
Total peak employment, yeah. And that was spread over the 3 shifts.
Correct.
And those were roughly the same size?
The 12 to 8 was not quite the same, but overall, yes.
So you had these like multiple rush hour slugs where one shift was coming in as the other shift was leaving. And that was part of the triangle, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody here really said absolutely we're against it. It's just concern.
Yeah, and
if you really study and get some of these answers, I think this is a good opportunity to really seriously investigate, because you get some companies that are not capable of doing what they're able to do. Plenty of them out there. These guys have a good track record. I'm happy to hear that. Really, but I don't think we have all the answers. That's the only thing I'm saying. And I think that's a lot of what people overall are saying tonight.
well, I think we have the numbers on this, but I also do think that we need to really, if this were to move forward, we'd have to make some changes to the way the streets are designed. We can't make them larger, but we can make things one way.
And why are we not looking at another road? I know there was a whole floodplain situation, but wasn't there a proposed road throughways that would give that area?
So what was discussed last meeting was that the ordinance says that we have to have, subdivision ordinance says that in projects 50 units or more, which obviously this is, a second access road would be needed. Their position is we have a second access road because there's the lower roadway, which Ms. Woods pointed out gets flooded. So I don't know how viable that would be anyway.
The choke point problems are not on their parcel. It's not an access to the parcel question. It meets that legal standard. It's just a little bit downstream of it where you have these bottlenecks and these sightlines. The traffic can get off of their property, but then has these other problems.
And also a clarifying point about traffic going to and from that property. That street is being widened. There's a plan to widen that street and there is a plan to put sidewalks, correct?
Yes.
It's going to be a two-way and it's going to be a proper size. So that was mentioned.
That's right. And then this, unfortunately, the segment like between the library and the factory will be better than the section between out in front of the two churches.
Yeah, and I think that's where we run into the issues on those smaller side streets and on the intersections at Valley Street.
Absolutely.
I
And
think the bigger points we missed here.
briefly, please, though.
There are currently with a few number of cars coming out of Bird, going north on 20, there are issues now. There were issues 44 years ago or 60 years ago, whatever it is.
Yes.
It is issues now. Back to some of the points I was trying to make, the town hadn't done anything with the known issues.
Exactly.
So again, echelon, thumbs up. But the town, don't wait till something like this happens. People do talk about traffic because it's problems now. They encounter those right now. The streetscape that was done made Valley a more narrow street. So, that's why cars get sideswiped. That's why, I drive a pickup. I can't even see. I have to get halfway out in the lane, the southbound, to see what's coming either way. So.
And there are speeding problems too.
Study, we know there's gonna be more cars. It's gonna be, but.
Thank you. Yeah.
Take care of stuff.
So.
Yeah, is that a yellow curb right in front of that property? Yeah, there's always a white van parked there.
Well, he's not parked there.
He does.
He's parked there right in that spot. Then we need to enforce that.
Yeah, that's why I cannot see around that van.
But even if he was there in that second spot, you still can't see down Valley. Matt, we talked about 4 spots being removed. Is it those 2 there and then 2 on the other side?
I'm not sure. They've got a sightline formula for it so that when you're here, what do you see? You guys working on that. I haven't seen the results of it yet.
Okay.
I sent that in and they said, they have no trouble. They have no trouble looking at it. They did sort of qualify. Be careful what you ask for. You might lose parking spaces.
Well.
And I said, I think we're good.
Okay, so VDOT
And are they
sightline survey.
sitting in giant trucks looking at what they can see, or are they sitting in like a sedan or, compact car?
I can't answer that. The standard is, it's an eye height of 3.5 feet.
Okay.
To see an object of 2.5 feet. See, the driver's eye is 3.5 feet up, looking at its tail light 2.5 feet away. So I'm not doing that study. I can't speak to what the results are, but that's the standard.
Okay, thank you.
So Matt, we might need some creative public planning on ways to improve, even if not even talking about changing traffic patterns, but visibility, putting up signs, putting up rumble strips, putting up, we talked about this, intersections that blink when someone's attempting to cross. Maybe something encouraging people to use headlights so you can see their car a little bit better. So maybe let's have a conversation about this in the future, which would be great for our needs now, but also if we were to develop and grow.
I know we're not the only historic downtown that has these problems, but much of Virginia was laid out for horse and buggy.
Right.
And you're working with bigger and bigger vehicles.
One thing I was going to follow up on what Mr. Quick said before was that with the improvements or things that have happened in the town, it does drive these issues, and it is helpful for us, both in terms of the right signage, the right sight lines, and also some adjustments. Perhaps we should have some one-way streets, in other words, the ways that you address, even if we never did any of this, the things that we would do just to deal with what we already have. It does creatively look at it as a town council. We've hemmed and hawed. I mean, there's been different times even over the last 5 or 10 years about, do we have fines for people who park illegally and what hours? And there's a whole discussion about all that. Yeah, there's a whole discussion about, but all that to say, as our town flourishes, those issues become more important.
And I think we can do all the traffic studies, but we already know what the problems are. So let's just work on fixing that.
Well, and it doesn't rise to the level of VDOT's concern, but we have our concerns.
Right.
So what else do we need to see for future research? Let's come up with a plan so that Mr. Lawless can get in reports lined up and speakers invited.
Okay, well, the town had concerns about affordability. I mean, that was not rampant, but certainly still, oh, sorry.
No, but thank you, yes. Mentioned a couple of times, and I think that's the area where my initial staff report was the most inaccurate, where I've learned the most since then about how low-income housing tax credits work, what the rents will be and who they're going to be for. So that was one where I sent some more detail today, and I feel good about that.
Okay, we'll look at that. I know I didn't have a chance.
Thank you.
Matt, I saw something about 30 years versus the 10 years that was originally proposed. Is that like really?
30 years, the LIHTC requirement. Right?
This-
If you didn't cover the LIHTC, you maintain that condition for 30 years.
I think it's 15 years, but Virginia might have a mandatory extension. I'm not really sure.
Our Crawford condition was 10,
Right.
written that way, if the LIHTC failed. 15 with an opportunity to renew, is that right? 15 plus 15?
We'd have to research that. Okay.
Matt, there's one of the things, I mean, these numbers have been flung different directions, but it would be helpful. And I don't know what the Timmons or other people look at this, but the issue of people who've adjusted the way they work, we're still talking about assumptions that we make that people are driving to Charlottesville or they're driving to other locations. And I don't know what the data is. So we're like what the factual actual data would be. But what is the current percentage of people that work from home? What's projected in the next couple of years? Because the work world has changed. And I do think the assumption that we make that everybody drives to Charlottesville is just inaccurate. That's just not true.
Well, and the assumption too, that working from home means you don't drive anywhere. I think that, I don't know what the traffic studies would be all about, but I would think that people in town who are not working in Charlottesville are doing more driving maybe here.
More local driving.
More local driving, so.
I
Well,
think the average is 30% to get to your question.
So
there have been studies about
so if that's accurate, that's a dramatic impact on these numbers. Potentially, that's a potential very dramatic impact on how we understand these numbers, because we are suggesting thinking of them in a sense in an old paradigm, and this is a new paradigm. It really, I mean, that data is new. I mean, this is all new stuff in the last couple of years.
Well, and I would say that, depending on the rents in this community, these are the people that are working from home. I mean, they're not the folks who have, the retail jobs. They're people that are working in an office, and they're going to appreciate that high-speed internet and the ability to work from home. I mean, who here has the ability to work from home at least one day a week?
I
Okay.
work
So
5
4
days.
out of 5 in your new job now? Not yet, but
Nope,
maybe.
not a-
Okay. Well, 4 out of 5 of us can at least spend time working from home. So it's a real number. It has some significance, but you raise a good
And-
point. They may be more local.
Right, and I don't know how much these numbers are gonna fluctuate now that, like, with the state of Virginia, all state employees have to go back to work, but those who are not state employees, it's fluctuating still, I think.
Well, we can definitely have more conversations about affordability. Do we need to bring in any experts to talk about that?
No, but I'd like to see something a little more concrete, especially about the rents.
Well,
And the
yes.
expected rents, because you gave a wonderful presentation, but I'm hearing that those numbers are way low. And I'm concerned about the affordability.
Right.
For the
Well,
people in this town.
But to follow up on what you said, and Matt, maybe it's helpful to clarify this. Whatever the numbers are, you pushed a number in there that's very high. In other words, the 20%. Can you explain that? Explain, in other words, the 20%, there's a very high number, which is abnormal in a project like this, that actually pushes that number up. In other words, then there's I think it's in at 20, Matt, on this.
It's high both ways. So the staff report called out a condition and agreed to offer for 20% of the homes at 60% AMI, and that's the household income and the rent level that goes with that. This is
a ceiling.
What LIHTC does is stricter than that. So a larger number, I want to double check this because it is what this today. A deeper affordability and a much lower rent for a longer period of time, and more of the apartments be covered.
So so the asterisk on this is not a guarantee, correct? As per our conversation last week on Friday, you were saying this was not.
4% LIHTC is easier to get than 9% LIHTC, but it's not automatic. You don't want to promise that this is.
Right, yeah, what's on the property, being proffered 10 years, the 20%, 60%
Right.
Okay.
If that federal tax credit comes through, then you can do more, but it's hard to say now exactly what that's going to be.
It is, and frankly, it's very early to be designing the capital stack on a project this complicated. So we're agreeing to the proffer as proposed, and it's double what Albemarle County holds up as the standard for affordability.
And that's what I was trying to get at, so that's already built into this. This has a very high percentage already which is good in terms of if you want affordable housing, and which is what's already in this offer.
What would the rents be at that affordable rate, though? Is it the 1668?
So hypothetically, like not committing to this project, but if one were built in this area next door from here, your income table right now is published here at the state website. And this is what those tables would be. So there's a couple of buildings in Crozet that operate like this. There's a couple of buildings in Charlottesville that operate like this. And this is what that income level is. So for the single person in the 1 bedroom, including utilities, you're at 1,100. If you make a little bit less than 44,000, you still pay the 1,100. So there's some cost burden that comes in there. But this is the fixed rent number that the landlord is guaranteed to get, and that's their haircut over what the market rate might be.
David, you're actually not allowed to charge that. You have to back up the utility allowance. So the studios, if we did it today, would be $1,000 a month.
I was just like, if it were all.
12 to 15%, increase in deduct the utility allowance.
Which
changes
they've
provided the rental numbers based on exactly what it is today, based on the utility allowance for this project. And those rent numbers are changed every year by these program administrators.
Okay, so that's the correct grid, that's the correct chart, right?
I can't answer that. Yeah, Matt, I think we have, well, this is the first time we're seeing the staff report. So we haven't had the chance to review this, but the numbers that we provided were like $1,000 a month for a studio, $1,060 for a 1-bedroom. They might have been $1,240 for a 2-bedroom.
Well, to clarify that though, I think that email said that that was your average rents on projects that you've developed in the state or other projects you've developed. Is that,
No.
was that my correct understanding of that?
I'm afraid that was a misunderstanding. I mean, rents vary by submarket, so every property we have is priced based on its, very localized demand and supply.
So the rents of $1,000 up to $1,450 is what you would expect to get on this community
If it opens tomorrow.
if it opened tomorrow.
Correct.
What would the affordable rents be on the 20% affordable? Because that's his chart,
That is at 60% of area median income. Those are the rents at 60% area median income after backing out the utility allowance.
the chart that he just had.
That is the problem. Right, 60, that's 60% in line.
20%, 60%. Yeah. But the numbers that we just rattled off, so I guess we just need to verify that in writing between the town and us as to what rents we're talking about. These rents
Yeah.
are set, they've changed every year by the program administrator.
Right, of course.
Whatever units are accepted as this problem.
Right.
Will be subject as a subset to those third-party rules that change.
Right. Can you send us something elaborating on the affordable rents, what you propose the market rents might be if you open today, and the income guidelines for the affordability?
Well, I think we'll look for the Matt.
I think we have it already.
That has been transmitted.
Yeah.
Because that is the language that we proposed. Beyond that, market rates will be exactly as they sound, whatever the market can bear. And frankly, they will have to be aggressive to pick up the slack effectively economically for the 20% of the subset. That's been properly affordable. Again, this is technically a very difficult project. It's all of the above strategy to make this work. It would be a difficult project in most markets, and particularly in Scottsville. And so the idea of proffering 20% of your units for a decade to be economically constrained is a huge sacrifice. So we want it to be more, and we respect that intent. But if you still want the project to be financially viable and not fail, then there's a balance to be had. And we have proffered the maximum we believe is viable for the project to still succeed.
Okay, so we're not necessarily getting the LIHTC, right? We're
not
getting,
proffering that, no.
right,
You can't guarantee it, it's a federal government decision.
Right. right.
Does it help to hear like a general explanation from somebody like the Piedmont Housing Alliance about how that works?
Well, I mean, if it's not,
I think we should focus on what the commitment is from the developer.
yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense to me, but I guess I'm still confused because if the rents are 1,100, if you're, you said between 1,000 and 1,450, but that's what that chart says. So where's the affordability?
He's referring to the affordable rents.
I'm sorry?
His numbers track with the numbers on that report.
Yes.
He's describing.
Do you know anyone who can afford that?
Well.
Yeah, is that where the numbers on your chart, those were at 60% annualized, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the confusion.
And so the email that was sent out that said and I thought it said it was your average rents on other developments that you've done was pretty much those numbers.
So there's definitely some sort of miscommunication there. So those grants are specific to this project, it's specific to
The affordability
the concept
component.
plans that we have for this building. I mean, it goes as specific as counting exterior walls, that's how you factor in your utility allowance. Yeah, that's how you calculate your utility allowance for every single unit. So yeah, they're definitely specific.
Okay, all right, so the email that was sent out, and I wish I could find it right now.
I misunderstood that too, because I thought that was like a cross your.
Yeah,
And that's what we're reluctant to publish those kinds of, or speculate as to what the market rate will be. Something that's years away.
well, yeah, fair enough, absolutely, no one knows what the
because
market's
when
gonna
draft
do.
Numbers get into sort of public conversation, they become far more rigid than what it should be, particularly with something these market rates.
Well, I guess I'm curious, we don't really know what, the finishes are gonna look like. We know there's gonna be a basketball court, a gym, a pool, so is this something that you might consider luxury? Is this something that new construction in Charlottesville, a 1-bedroom is going for 1,900 right now, and that was from our Albemarle County affordability person. So is that what you're looking to get for a 1-bedroom? What do you, if you open today, what might you?
Speculate in the public record. But we do believe there's a healthy discount because of the view of Route 20 against Charlottesville rates.
Right.
So we're not proposing Charlottesville. To answer the other part of the question, we would build the same exact product, whether it's market rate or LIHTC or whatever, with this granite countertops, stainless appliances, nice finishes. We don't really know how to build other than that.
Well,
That's what we've done across the board.
And you have to build, it would have to be uniform. The units all have to be the same. You can't say, well, this is a low income apartment, so you're getting these finishes, and this is a market, you're getting these. Right.
So that's it. But,
It makes the point,
administratively,
though.
from a construction perspective, that would be my.
Right.
That's not what we do. That's not what we've done. Our portfolio speaks for itself. We do upscale housing and it looks great.
Oh, I believe you. Absolutely. We as a body have talked about affordability in the past, and it's a concern of ours. It is mentioned in the comprehensive plan. It's also not something that we can really regulate. It's not our job to say that it has to be affordable. We could say, no, we don't like this project and we don't want to move forward with it. Your proffer is meaningful because that's written in stone. That's what you have to follow through on. You can't renege on that down the road.
And to your point, that's also a minimum. We generally exceed the things we commit to.
That's nice to hear, because the bare minimum isn't always good enough. We don't like that.
But in this case, again, that 20% is a substantial.
And that's actually why I brought it up when we're talking about this, is that it is, and that's appreciated in this, because when people talk about affordable housing, I think that's lost in terms of the conversation. We can get lost in the numbers, but that 20% is a very significant number.
If you think about what the federal and state government allocate financially to incentivize for affordable housing, then you get sort of a grasp as to the measure of what they're trying to offset in order to incentivize the state. So a lot of localities have affordability intentions and policies, but they have to keep it at a small percentage because they're not offering any sort of financial piece to offset the costs that have to go in regardless for it to be the same or better quality.
Well, when I hear you saying that it's a substantial, I'm hearing that it's a substantial hit to your wallet to have those 20% affordable units. And that makes me wonder, again, how much are these going to rent for? So if, you just mentioned who do we know that could afford a studio that's 1,000? Well, that's the affordable component. That's not the market component.
Yeah,
The 80% of them, I don't know what those rents are going to be.
that's my concern.
We can think more about it and weigh the pros and cons. I mean, obviously it's going to be market. So if no one wants to move to Scottsville at those rents, then, businessmen, they're going to lower their rents. They're going to be marketable. You want occupancy, right? Do you strive for 100% occupancy?
It's really what we achieve across our portfolio.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. What other folks do we want to hear from
at our next meeting? And when do we want to have our next meeting? Unless there's a motion on the table.
That's not the question, and it's not about anything like. Mr. Gaskin, you had mentioned that you wanted your slides online. Matt, where are his presentation slides online? I tried to reference the Scottsville Lofts at Gmail, but I couldn't find his slides to reference. All I could find was the actual application.
I also posted this town website. And I know Nancy's podcast, she also posted it to what's that podcast?
The
James River.
The James, is it, oh, it's not.
The one she did 2 weeks ago.
I'll look for this list and I'll either send you.
Okay, I mean, are you able to link it to like below
Yeah,
that area?
this will be the list of it.
Okay, yeah.
Can I answer a question you brought up earlier? You brought up earlier about you wish these could be condos, and we've done these projects. When you're doing a historic rehabilitation tax credit project, the federal, there's 2 credits, there's the federal and Virginia. The federal one obligates you to be income producing for rent. So that's why so many of these warehouse conversions or other adaptive use are rental. This IRS makes in order to have the credit. So, but again, there's nothing against home ownership. Certainly there are strategic benefits to that long term. There's nothing to say that in the future these couldn't be condominiumized. We do design with that in mind as a possible.
That reminds me, someone had a question about what was the land surrounding the factory going to be used for?
I think there's 18 acres or so that's under a conservation easement.
Okay.
On the information provided, it says that there's 41 acres total minus the 18 point something in the conservation easement, minus an additional, say, 5 for the building itself, minus an additional 5 for parking lots. So what is that? That leaves about 10 to 11 left over here.
I don't know where the other 5 and 5 came from. I mean, the only.
Well, because the parking lot outside of the burn is about 2 acres, so I'm rounding up based on asphalt area, and then the asphalt around the building itself. It's just a general guesstimate, giving them over. So it actually more open land if you don't just.
I mean, you clearly have thought through the site math better than we have.
That's unfortunate.
No, it's not, because
She's fabulous.
Our intent is to redevelop for the historic tax credit guidelines, and that means the site itself is historic.
Okay,
So
I'm
we're not-
asking.
So we're not changing the site materially. The building, the grounds, the parking, the impervious area, there will be some expansion of those, but those will be effectively in margins. So if you looked at it from an area today versus what we've done, it shouldn't look substantially different to you, because the state and the federal government wouldn't let us do it anyway.
And they are picky. If you saw Timmons' first layout before I marked it up, there was a lot more asphalt, but EHR and NPS are so strict that like the sidewalks in front of the primary historic entrance, they'll make you keep those. So you can't pave that, pave over those, because that's part of the I guess historic pedestrian circulation.
So everywhere you see the parking in the circular area, we're kind of working in the fringes, almost pushing asphalt out a little bit on existing drive aisles, because that circulation pattern is actually considered historic. So we have very tight lines we get to cover.
And then for whatever it's worth, we usually try to park our projects at about 1.5 spaces per unit. And so what we aim for, and we were able to get there, is 1.5 spaces per unit inside the barn. And then the spaces outside of the barn, I guess they help us meet and exceed the town's parking ordinance, but operationally, I guess we're not relying.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has a second car or even a third car, they're gonna be outside the burn, but functionally we want to operate inside the burn in a certain way. But to answer your question another way, there will be no additional new construction on the site because it's a historic tax credit project. So there are safeguards for the town
and its citizenry because we're complying with those well-established programs.
Any school there before, for example, some of this parking lot that is in they are actually using the fence. No, the far end of this was, just a tennis court, not multiples, but a tennis court was part of that block. And out in front was 3 little holes.
Are we ready to move forward? Do we have anything
Three
else we
little
want to have for our next meeting, or when is our next meeting?
I don't think that's part of the plan.
I would like to see more information about sustainability, just to
But we
get a
do want to do
sense
a trail.
of that. From what I understand, it's completely impossible to make any.
Yeah. Agreed.
Sorry, cynical.
All right, so
I had a quick question. Who's going to be operating the levy? Would that fall under your purview?
That's correct. As the property owners, we'd be responsible for the floodgate maintenance and all those different protocols. We had a pretty extensive report, I think, from a few years ago, continues that inventories all this.
Okay.
and you have to file that report annual, like a new report. Do I remember hearing something about that last time? There has to be an inspection each year and that report has to get filed somewhere? No,
The county's is, I'm not sure what the
Okay.
status of this one is going to be. But
Because
yeah,
it's
I
on-
have Army Corps of Engineers inspections every year, where they check that equipment, giving it.
downtown. Okay.
Doesn't that
It's really
limit your
realistic for the
purchase
Corps
on-
of Engineers and FEMA than it is the town.
Doesn't the Timmons report online about that flood study though state that they weren't able to get sufficient information?
Well-
They had a guesstimated answer about the pumps.
Yeah, I think certain things weren't functional at the time.
We're planning on upgrading everything to new, sluice gates that are controlled electronically.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to protect your building and make sure that, yeah, that's, so I'm sure that will be well maintained. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so
Can I just one more thing that has been on my list? I think Mr. Carl, he brought up an excellent point. I mean, I love anybody that's bold enough to get up there and do math, in a public meeting. I certainly don't like doing that. But to answer his question at this conceptual level, there are costs to the project, but those costs are offset by these incentives. And the historic tax credits, once syndicated, will bring back to the project about a third of the equity. So that right there, your cost minus about a third. And there's probably some other incentives in there as well that'll shave off a little more. But that's how you get to an operating debt burden that's serviceable by the banks. So I thought that was an excellent question. Because really financial liability, I mean, I know we're agonizing over all of these points and they're good points. But ultimately, the bigger boogeyman is failure, right? Let's say everybody lends their faith and confidence to it and it stumbles. So I think questions about financial viability are right on target. And honestly, that's what we do. So I almost feel more comfortable talking about that than I do about sight lines for intersections. That's really our bailiwick. But they're all important. So it's been a good dialogue.
And
I don't think it's really-
frankly, the sightlines aren't your problem.
Well, I wouldn't have a solution either. I mean, it's-
Yeah, but I'm saying, if we fix them now, then people can stop agonizing about them at every meeting we have about any project.
And more community buyer.
Right, exactly.
Well, and from our experience in working with a lot of historic Virginia, North Carolina localities, there's never a perfect moment where infrastructure matches need. There never is, because it's all deteriorating or being installed or being constructed. We're all moving on this sort of conveyor belt of obsolescence with what we install, design, and do, chasing a future demographic or data point that may not materialize. So it's a series of best judgments. And we're doing our best to redevelop important structures and not just rip up new farmers fields, et cetera, et cetera. But it does assume that we're plugging into infrastructure that serviced that site in the past. And however clumsily, because clearly with the box trucks and the tractor trailers, that wasn't a comfortable fit, but it works. So what we're doing now is less uncomfortable, but we all acknowledge that it's a big impact.
Okay. What's next?
Does anyone want to make a motion to move forward with this tonight, or do we want to adjourn to do more research?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn and do more research.
Oh,
Second.
wonderful idea.
So, Mr. Lawless, we've given you some ideas for who we'd like to hear from and what we'd like more information on moving forward. And I think we could take it from there. We might have new ideas next time and want to hear more. So,
Did we used to have a big map of Charlottesville in here? Did there used to be one? Or Charlotte's dreaming? I mean, not Charlotte.
oh,
Scottsville.
thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay,
Oh.
our brains fried. Should we?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty proud.
It's only 10:20. Oh, what? All right, so. Sounds good. I was actually gonna say, let's do it. Like, we've already talked
get it
about
out of
it, and actually the points that I had, I think, are
Night.
addressed.
Right.
Thank you. All right, so.
I think we should review the comprehensive plan now.
I think
Line by line.
Line by
I'm gonna take this away from you,
Absolutely.
Mr. Briscoe.
Okay, so are you all ready? I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, when's our next meeting?
Are we doing a working session?
Or November 7th. Well, we